It was such a normal night. Chris was an amazing guy. He had the idea to go to the tracks, and that's when somebody comes out from behind an electrical box. It never crosses your mind of like, this person wants to kill you. I really don't think I had fear bubbling up in me until he started to tie us up.
He was scary. He almost looked like a wild animal. I don't know how to say it any other way.
He could have kept the charade up a long, long time, and he could have crossed over the border and killed a lot more people.
2 people have been found murdered next door to their church.
He smashed your face with a sledgehammer, same one he used on Skip.
There wasn't any reason for them to have been killed. They were just good people.
He stabs me in my neck and with that weapon that he had, and he says, look how easily I can kill you.
He was like a phantom. You didn't know. He was completely off the grid.
Resendez had so many different looks. The way the man could change his looks like a chameleon. We believe that he could simply look at a train and know where it's going.
I remember him saying it was better than Greyhound.
He killed the Cernics, went back to Mexico, killed Miskovitcha, went back to Mexico. Let's go and come back and come back and back.
You had the right to remain silent.
When they brought him in and I rode up the elevator with him, I hate to say this, but I could have taken him out in the elevator. And I thought about it for a second, okay? It was a natural reaction from what this guy did.
Her mother was laying there with a grubbing hoe embedded in her forehead.
All of his victims were just such good people.
She didn't deserve this. She never hurt nobody.
My skin crawled just looking at him. I knew how evil he was.
I've asked him if he picked up a nickname, and he said they called him Choo Choo Man, and he smiled at that.
I used to love to hear the trains, but not anymore. I hope maybe one day we can get to where we can enjoy that sound again, but I don't know if it's going to come.
He was known as the Railroad Killer. In the late 1990s, fear and panic swept through railroad towns across the United States over a rail-riding fugitive who would jump on and off freight trains, preying on unsuspected victims, oftentimes murdering them inside their own homes. He was identified as Angel Maturino Resendez, a Mexican-born drifter who bumped Osama bin Laden from the top spot on the FBI's most wanted list.
This story has taken us from Texas to Kentucky to here in Indiana, where one woman, one survivor, shared with us the story about the night that she was traumatized and terrorized by Resendez after she and her boyfriend left a fraternity party walking along the railroad tracks. They were brutally attacked and tied up. He was left for dead. She survived. After years of evading the authorities, there was a stunning surrender that captured headlines across the world.
Chris was an amazing guy. He was 6'5", so he was really tall, and you just, I don't know, you got a sense from him that he wanted to be your friend. As soon as you met him, you felt comfortable. He loved to give great big bear hugs. That was kind of his signature move, that he gave great big bear hugs.
In August of 1997, Holly Dunn Pendleton was starting a new school year with a new boyfriend.
We met in college, so we actually met at a bar. We had a lot of similarities. We were raised the same. We both came from Catholic families, and we were both from the Midwest. You know, there just was a lot. I think I thought, this guy is fun and in a fraternity, which I had never dated a guy that was in a fraternity before.
She and her boyfriend, Chris Mayer, were both juniors at the University of Kentucky in Lexington.
We had really just begun the year, and I was saying, okay, I'm going to do better than I've ever done before. I'm going to go to all my classes. I'm going to get good grades, you know, like reaffirming that I'm going to be a good student. And then I'm like, but as soon as Chris says, like, let's go to a party, I'm like, okay, let's go, you know, like I was so excited. When he picked me up, I thought it was a date, but he picked me up and there were like 8 people in the car. And I was like, man, I was like, this is not what I was expecting. And so we go to this party, and Chris had actually lived in this house before. So he knew the area, he knew the house, he knew all the people because they were all his fraternity brothers and his friends, you know. So like, I didn't know anybody there. I think I just felt a little like I really just want to be alone with Chris. I don't want to be here with all these people. And I think that Chris kind of read that. He could tell, like, I was not wanting to be there.
The pair decided to take a break from the party and go for a walk.
He said, let's go take a walk. And he said the tracks are, you know, just 2 blocks that way. And I said, oh, that's awesome. Let's get some coins and put them on the tracks so the trains will flatten them. And because I had done that when I was a kid. And I was like, so let's find some coins, you know. And I think we even went around and found some coins. I think as we're going to get the coins is when 2 of his fraternity brothers were like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, going to the tracks. And they were like, we're coming with you. I'm just trying to get alone with Chris. And now 2 of his fraternity brothers are going with us. So we all go to walk to the tracks. And we put the coins on the tracks that we had collected. So we were literally waiting for the train to come by, and no trains came. So, you know, Chris and I were talking and kind of showing the other 2 fraternity brothers that, like, we don't really want you here. So I think they took the hint, and they were like, okay, guys, we're going to go back to the party, because it was, you know, and it was boring for them. And Chris and I were like, okay, this is our opportunity to stay here and talk. And that's one thing that Chris and I could do, was we could talk for hours and about nothing. And then I loved that.
They thought they were alone. They were wrong.
Maybe 15, 20 minutes passed before we got up to go back to the party. It wasn't long. We got up to leave, and we start walking back toward the party.
That's when the 2 spotted a figure, a person, emerging from behind an electrical box on the side of the tracks.
He said, do you have any money? And then it was more like, give me all your money. And you could almost tell the anger was starting to build up in this person. And I didn't see it, but he had a weapon on Chris the whole time. I didn't see the weapon till later. So I didn't know really why we were complying. And he told Chris to get down on his knees because Chris was really tall and he wanted to go through his backpack. So I'm like, you know, what do you want? Like, if you want some money, I can take my ATM card and go get you some money. What do you want, you know? And at that point, I saw the weapon. It almost looked like an ice pick. It was just a sharp, looked like some kind of knife, but ice pick. It was really thin. I mean, that just introduced a whole nother level of fear. I had no idea what was about to come, but it was just like, give you whatever you want and leave us alone.
At what point did, you start to realize he's saying no to all of this? You start to really, that fear starts to, come up in your throat, in your stomach, and you're like, this is not good.
I really don't think I had fear bubbling up in me until he started to tie us up. So he dragged Chris, he took him by his shirt because he was still on his knees and kind of dragged him to the side of the tracks. And I just started to walk behind him because I don't want to be dragged. So I'm like, okay, I'll just walk over here. Where are you taking us? We're laying face down and I'm kind of watching what this guy is doing. And he's got this bag and it's sort of up at the tracks. And so he lifts something out of the bag and I can remember hearing him rip it. And he rips it into gags for us. And so he comes over and he gags Chris first. And then he comes over to me and he gags me, and I don't know what made me think to stick out my tongue so that the gag didn't work. I stuck out my tongue really hard, and so he couldn't tie the gag tight. He tied up Chris's hands with his backpack. And then he took off my belt and tied up my hands behind my back with my belt.
Tied up, terrified, the two watched as their attacker walked back up towards the tracks. Frantically, they tried to help each other escape.
I got my hands untied, but I held on to the belt because I wanted to be able to hold on to it to make it look like I was still tied up. I'm trying to tell Chris, like, stick your tongue out, the gag won't work. And I pulled down his gag so he could talk to me. I was getting upset. And Chris was like, everything's gonna be okay. Just trying to calm me down. And he comes, I don't even know how much time passed before he comes over to Chris. When I replay it in my mind, he hit Chris several times with a rock. It wasn't just one time, but he did only hit him one time, and it was a 52-pound rock. I do remember him carrying it over, and it was like really hard for him to carry because it was really heavy. But I remember him carrying it over and just dropping it on Chris's head. And at that point, I think my mind changed to, obviously he did want to hurt us. That wasn't until that moment that I'm like, wow, this is for real. Like he's really he's hurting us now. And I might not make it through this. Like that crossed my mind at that moment. Like I might not make it through this.
That fear soared when Chris stopped moving and the attacker turned to Holly.
He came over to me and he climbed on top of me and I heard Chris gurgling. And he actually went over to him and got up and went over to him. And he said, he's gone, don't worry about him anymore. So then he comes over to me and he's going to rape me. And it didn't even cross my mind that was going to happen. So I try to fight him. He climbs on top of me and I'm trying to punch him. I'm trying to slap him. I'm trying to scream. I don't know how to fight. I'd never been in a fight in my life, but I'm trying to fight for my life. And he stabs me in my neck and with that weapon that he had. And he says, look how easily I could kill you. And so I just stopped. I mean, I literally felt like I was floating above my body. I didn't feel anything. I said, and I was saying to him, like, what's your name? My name's Sarah. I had told him that my name was Sarah. And I said, and I've got a family and I've got a sister. I've got people who are going to want to see me again. Do you have a family? Do you know, and I'm trying to trying to humanize him, right? And so I'm asking him about his family and if they would want to see him again. And, you know, like trying to show how our lives are similar. He was answering my questions. He was, you know, thought I was being nice at the time. And I thought that I had actually befriended him. And so after he raped me, he put my pants back on. The last thing I remember is him taking one of my earrings and he took a ring that I had on. And I don't remember anything after that. I don't remember being hit. I remember him knowing he was gone. And I don't know how I knew he was gone, but I knew he was gone.
Badly bruised and beaten, she knew she had to find help.
They never found what he hit me with, but I was hit 5 or 6 times in my face and 5 or 6 times in the back of my head. I had a broken eye socket, a broken jaw, and I had all these cuts in the back of my head. And I'm all bloody. I'm a broken jaw, so I can't even talk right. And I walked to a person's house to go get help, and I actually don't even knock. I see that the TV is on in this house, and I open it's just a screen door, and I opened the screen door and walked into their house. I'm sure that had to frighten them a little bit because the guy that was sitting on the couch studying didn't even know if I was there to hurt him or if whoever was after me was coming back to get me. Like, he didn't know anything. But I just said, could you call 911? He said I just kept asking for a glass of water. I just needed water, which I found out later was a sign of shock, that I was going into shock. You ask for water. I mean, I don't really even remember being loaded onto the ambulance. I remember riding in the ambulance to the hospital, but I don't remember being even put on the ambulance. I asked the guy in the back of the ambulance with me if we could go to McDonald's and get me a cheeseburger because I was really hungry. And so, you know, and you might not expect that when somebody's been through something so terrible, but I think humor is my defense mechanism. So, I mean, I know that now. And so I was trying to diffuse the situation. You can find humor when at the darkest places, and it can help. So I think that's what I was doing.
But fear set in again when she started asking about Chris.
From the time that I got to that guy's house till the time I got onto the ambulance, I kept saying, my friend's still out there, my friend's still out there, make sure they check on my friend that's still out there, my friend's still out there, my friend's still out there. Nobody was talking about him. And that also made me think, this is bad. It's not good. And I know why you're not talking about him, because he's gone. I remember my parents had really just gotten there, and I looked at my dad and I said, Chris is gone, isn't he? And he said, yep, he is.
At that moment, what did you think?
I don't think I had the emotional capacity at that point to even swallow that. Couldn't even show emotion because the adrenaline was too high. So I was in the hospital for 5 days. My dad thought I had dyed my hair red. And as soon as they wired my mouth shut, my dad literally got me, had the discharge papers done while I was still in surgery. And promised them that he'd, do all the things, and they discharged me right after surgery, and my dad flew me home. I went back to school 1 month after the attack. I went home and I needed to heal physically. And I did, and I healed physically, and then I told my parents I need to go back to school. I went back because I needed to take back control. I needed to be in something normal. So going back to school for me was normal.
But while life was returning to normal, the attack never left her mind. And the sound of a train approaching would trigger terror.
I'm trying to just keep living and doing what I'm doing. But it was hard. If I drove over the tracks or if I heard a train going down those tracks, I literally would break out into a cold sweat and I stopped talking and I had a panic attack.
At this point, there's no talk of a serial killer. It was just police were looking for a person who attacked 2 college kids.
I remember my detective saying, I think we'll catch him when he does this again.
I was very, very close to her. She was a fantastic student. She loved reading. She loved school. She always knew since she was, I think, in 6th or 7th grade that she was going to attend Rice University. That was just her plan, and she did. She was such a vibrant, just energetic, ambitious person that really believed in education. That's who she was. That's the sister that I know, and that will always be the image that I have of her.
For the first time now, a member of the Dominguez family is speaking publicly about the murder of a young woman who had her whole life ahead of her. Growing up near Brownsville, Texas, Alex Dominguez remembers his younger sister, Noemi, as someone who knew her calling early in life, a role model to their siblings.
That was something that she always wanted to do, is be a teacher. And you might think, well, why bother going to such a high-level university if you end up just in a classroom? The way she thought it was, well, that's why I'm going to this high-level university, is because I want these kids to excel. And that's a tremendous gift to give back. I have 9 brothers and sisters. So you always had a pair. You always had a partner in crime to go and learn with, whether it was going to the public library or playing games together. She was 2 years younger than me, so we were always doing things together when we were in school, and then we thankfully were able to spend a couple of years in college together. She was a fantastic actress. And competed in speech and debate. So, she and I were debate partners for a year when I was a senior. It was really fun. One of my favorite things about her is she really began to study and read Japanese anime. She thought it was fantastic. It was a different type of reading material. And at one point, she had one at school when she was a teacher. And I think her students saw it and they said, Miss, what is this? And she told them it was Japanese anime, a manga, and in their free time, she would teach the kids Japanese. Who does that?
In June of 1999, 26-year-old Noemi had just left her teaching job at Benjamin Franklin Elementary School in Houston to pursue a master's degree. She was living in an apartment in South Houston, not far from the Texas Medical Center and the railroad tracks.
There were nice middle class and some working class homes in the area. She reported there was never really any crime in the area, so she always felt comfortable there. She felt safe. She was the only one living in Houston. Everybody else either lived in the Hill Country, Dallas, or were back home. And so none of us had any inkling of a serial killer being out there.
Noemi had planned a trip to visit her brother Alex, who was living in Dallas.
I would sometimes go down to Houston. I'd spend time with her. We'd go eat Chinese food together. And we would just kind of catch up on life. And thankfully, we stayed in touch with many of our college friends. We had a number of mutual friends. And I knew that she was going to be coming up to Dallas soon for an anime convention. And I just thought it was great. I remember she gave me a few videotapes of Japanese anime, said, here, watch these are great. And that's kind of how she was.
But on the day Noemi was supposed to visit, she never called and never came.
She was going to come up from Houston, and our other sister was going to be coming up from a different location. And she said that, she hadn't heard from my sister. And we thought, well, she may be running late. This was really at the time when cell phones were not prevalent. And so we thought we would give her a little bit of time to see if she showed up. And we waited and waited, and nothing, we hadn't heard from her. So I picked up my older sister who lived in Garland, Texas. And we decided to just drive down and stop at every major town that we could find a tow truck driver, just to see if maybe she broke down somewhere. And of course, we kept doing this until we finally ended up in Houston. It was very unusual. It was certainly not like her. She's the type of person that if she had broken down somewhere on the road, she would have called somebody to let somebody know, especially my parents. She would have probably called my mom, said, this happened, I'll be here.
When Noemi's brother and sister arrived, her front door was open, but it appeared no one was home.
We spent a a few hours there. Her boots were outside that she was going to be wearing at the anime convention. So we thought that was odd, but her vehicle wasn't there. So we didn't know what to think at that point. We called one of my friends who was a med student and doing residency in one of the Houston hospitals, and I asked her to check to see if somebody matching her description and her name had come in for any reason. She called back later saying that she hadn't heard anywhere, and then she certainly called around. So we spent some time in her apartment going through her different credit card companies, calling them, asking, has anybody used a credit card? But most of them said, no, nobody's used a credit card. We must have been there for a few hours, and it was getting late, and I remember telling my sister that came with me, there's only one place that we haven't looked. And I told her, just stay here, let me go look. And there had been a pile of clothes. It's not unusual, I think, when Noemi's in a hurry to get somewhere to her just to make a mess. And well, that's where I looked, and that's where I found her. I think now, looking back at the things that I'd seen in the apartment, a toaster oven being on the floor, just things out of place, and just imagining what she went through, because she must have been going through those rooms running for her life, and just wondering what terror she must have been feeling.
Noemi Dominguez's body was found on June 5th in her bedroom with a fatal blow to her head.
The next day, Noemi Dominguez was murdered in her Southeast Houston home. She, too, had been beaten to death.
Let us not forget about the name Noemi Dominguez.
In the Southeast Houston neighborhood of that former school teacher, they were terrified after the body of that 26-year-old woman was found.
I think about her all the time. I think she's motivating still. I would say that she's easily one of the reasons why I try to serve the public. Because I'm here. And if she was here, I know she would do the same thing.
For weeks, the Dominguez family had no answers as to who could have killed Noemi or why. Then a call came from the Texas Rangers.
We finally got some information that the Texas Rangers had a lead and that they would be investigating that. We certainly knew the pattern and then the profile of the person. Somebody that was frequently riding the rails.
The suspect was 39-year-old Angel Maturino Resendez, more commonly known by an alias, Rafael Resendez Ramirez. He was a Mexican national who had been deported from the U.S. 17 times.
It really made us think about, well, how secure is our rail system, that people can just jump on trains and move around the country without anybody checking on them.
Those same questions have been plaguing a small town just outside Schulenburg, Texas. Just one day before Noemi Dominguez's body was found, there was a shocking discovery. A 73-year-old grandmother found bludgeoned to death inside her home.
Our top story on Eyewitness News tonight, new fears in a small Central Texas town. Another woman found murdered in her home.
I don't know if she didn't deserve this. She never hurt nobody. She's always trying to help other people.
Josephine Kavitchka lived alone, about 90 miles away from Noemi Dominguez, in a house where she had spent her entire life. It was only a mile from the railroad tracks. Her son-in-law says his wife discovered the gruesome scene herself when she stopped by to see how her mother was doing.
She found her. She came running through the pasture. I knew something was wrong. And that's when we called 911.
Investigators determined Josephine Kavitchka and Noemi Dominguez had been killed with the same weapon. But the list of people who Angel Maturino Resendez was accused of murdering was longer than the grieving families could fathom.
Now, homicide in a small Texas town. The double murder of a church pastor and his wife has stunned the small town of Weimar.
Only a month earlier, a pastor and his wife were also found bludgeoned to death in Weimar, Texas, about 3.5 miles from Josephine Kavitchka's house.
Very close community, and until this happened, people left their doors unlocked, left their cars unlocked, windows down in the cars. Really nice, peaceful community.
Norman Cernick, who went by Skip, and his wife Karen lived in the parsonage outside the Weimar United Church of Christ. It was only a few feet away from the railroad tracks.
Reverend Cernick was, involved in all sorts of different activities, very popular in town, very friendly, just good people.
Skip is one of these guys that, you always had a Christmas party for the church council members. He liked to make homemade wine, as do a lot of the members in Weimar.
He and Karen would do cross-stitch. She had her projects and he had his, and that was their Christmas gifts for people.
He was involved in all kinds of things. They'd go to all the basketball games, football games, softball games, all that kind of stuff that goes on in Weimar. Karen was very easy to talk to, very easy to get along with, very friendly.
They had a garden there, the Cernicks did, and she was out in that garden all the time. And evidently he had gone by there a number of times and seen her and decided, hey, I have the opportunity. She's there.
Sunday, May 2nd, 1999 was Skip Cernick's 47th birthday. He was supposed to lead church services that morning at 9:30. But when he and Karen didn't show up, members of the church council became concerned.
I was president of the church council, trying to figure out where the minister is so the church service can start. And then, of course, I volunteered to go into the parsonage, which was a big mistake. We have a safe room where we keep keys for all the buildings. And we had a parsonage key there, so I walked over with the key and unlocked the door and walked in. Well, the house was totally dark. All the blinds had been pulled down. Everything in the cabinets had been taken out. I thought they were house cleaning. Everything in the cabinets had been taken out because the kitchen counters were piled with dishes and pots and pans, etc., etc. But it was really, really dark. So I walked through the house, and then eventually the back room where there are 2 guest bedrooms. I mean, you walk on, let's see, it's on that side actually, and that's the master bedroom. And that's where I made my mistake. Well, I guess it wasn't. Anyway, that's when I found the bodies. When I walked into their bedroom.
Two people have been found murdered next door to their church. A parishioner found Reverend Norman Cernick and his wife dead in their home this morning when they didn't show.
Karen was covered in a blanket, so I didn't really see her. But I figured she was there. Skip was laying on his stomach, had some bruises on his body, which I didn't understand. And of course, I rang out of the house, picked up the phone, and called 911. EMS came. One of the ES members walked in the house and came out, and when he came out, he was ashen.
My wife and I went to the Presbyterian Church in Giddings, and back then we had the pagers that had the numbers on them. And sitting in church, my pager went off, and it was to call the Sheriff's Department 911. So I got to a phone and called, and they told me that my officer was working what looked like a homicide. But I remember going through LaGrange, and I was running lights and siren, and my radio was on. I heard one of the LaGrange officers go, "Who in the world was that?" And one of the other guys said, "I think that was the chief of Weimar." And the other guy came back and said, "They must have something going on serious there." And he was right. When I got here, the officer had, the area cordoned off. We had called the Texas Rangers. At that time, there was no door on the garage. The garage was open. There was a door to the house from the garage, so it was pretty easy entry. He took identification, driver's license, that sort of stuff, and spread those out. He was notorious for taking trinkets. The way they were killed was just so terrible.
I was serving as pastor at a church in Denver. We had started a new worship service, a contemporary service. While I was there, somebody called and said, came down and said, "There's a phone call you need to take." And so I took the call, not knowing what to be expected, and it was Ted. He told me what had happened as far as, Skip hadn't showed up to lead worship that day. At that point, they thought Skip and Karen had been shot. I was just shocked and stunned, and didn't even know what questions to ask.
I understand that he smashed her face with a sledgehammer, same one he used on Skip. And I'm not Roman Catholic, but I crossed myself before I went up to the podium to tell the congregation what had happened. It was only much later that I just completely broke down, and it was when Carol and I eventually came home, and with a glass of wine, me with my martini, we sat out on the porch and we just cried. And that was when I really broke down.
The first night after the Cernics were killed, the church had a gathering. The Neelys had gotten everybody together. Well, I walked around there and I broke up. You're working sort of with blinders on and doing what you need to be doing, and then you realize that, hey, this is friends. These are citizens. These are people that I know, that this guy has just killed their minister. And to see the grief on all their faces, that tore me up. That did. That was tough.
I had done hundreds of funerals, with families. I'd never been in that situation myself. A stunning number of people showed up. I mean, it was like Weimar was 1,400 people or something like that, and 1,200 people showed up for the service. It was a testimony to his impact in the community.
Skip and Karen were gardeners. They were planters of beauty. They were people who put things into life to create fruit to share with other people.
It was actually a time, instead of a spike down in my faith, it was a time when it went up. It was literally inspiring to see how people responded in gracious, kind support and an outpouring of love.
Skip, coming here as pastor, has been one of the blessings, the biggest blessings for Weimar.
And his wife is just as dear as he was.
I remember saying that day, this couldn't have been somebody local. It was just too heinous of a crime. You always hear that individual doesn't go back to the scene of the crime. So I remember we had sort of a community gathering at the football stadium. And I spoke to all the people that were there, and I tried to reassure them that, we were doing everything we could, and we did. I mean, my guys, my officers were on the streets constantly. I mean, the patrol was unbelievable. He came back and killed Miss Kavitska, 3-4 miles from Weimar. That just freaked everybody out again. I told the sheriff then, he gave me some details about what had gone on. I said, Sheriff, that's him. That's him. He took a train out of her, that she had for her grandkids, and laid it out. People didn't lock their doors prior to that. They started locking their doors. They bought guns. They bought outside lights. They bought alarm systems. I had little old ladies that would come to the office, and bring me a pistol that hadn't been shot in years. And, Chief, can you show me how to shoot this? Can you show me how to shoot this in case I need it? It was a scary time, very scary.
I've heard a lot of people are starting to pack their weapons with them, so got to protect yourself out here in the country.
I've got my shotgun shells with me, and I just brought my shotgun over because we're going to do some painting this evening, and since my gun is legal, I'll keep it with me.
No sleeping at night. The kids are terrified. You can't even go walking at night. Dogs are barking and you wonder who's back there.
Every single train that came through, one of my officers was there, watching day and night to see if, there was somebody on the train. And we stopped lots of trains.
As the Texas Rangers began to investigate, they started connecting the same killer to murders all across the country.
They were here every day. And that's how we connected the things. We were sitting in my office. They talked to their ranger in Houston, and we started comparing things, colors of the vehicle, trinkets, all this sort of stuff. That's where we first got the connection between the two.
The Cernics' red Mazda turned up in San Antonio 3 weeks after their murders, and fingerprints found inside the car were linked with the murder of a prominent doctor in Houston.
Dr. Benton was doing amazing work and research for Angelman syndrome at Baylor College of Medicine. He was helping children.
It's a really rare disease in children, And so there were all these other families that were really counting on her research. And so they were also victims in all of this.
Westview was, I would call it a very sleepy little community. At that time, I'd been with West University Place for approximately 10 years. The main crimes that we focused on were burglaries, thefts. We had not had any type of a homicide case for a number of years.
39-year-old Dr. Claudia Benton was a pediatric geneticist, a wife, and mother of 2. In Christmas of 1998, her husband and their 11-year-old daughters went out of town to visit family. She stayed home here in Houston's West University neighborhood, but her house is right across the street from Union Pacific Railroad tracks. On December 17th, Dr. Claudia Benton never showed up for a presentation at Baylor College of Medicine. Her colleagues became concerned and called police for a welfare check.
It was around 4:15 or so, I got a call. I learned that a body had been found in a house, and I met with patrol officers who then led me inside the house and took me upstairs. I'll admit it's a little bit scary because you're going into the unknown, and knowing that someone was just murdered in their home and such incredible violence occurred inside that home, it has an effect on a person. It had an effect on me.
When police entered the home, it had been ransacked. In the master bedroom, they found Dr. Benton's body covered in sheets. She had been beaten and stabbed to death.
He never brought his own weapons. He would always use a tool that he found in the house, and that was part of a knife in the butcher block that he found. There was a bronze-type metal figurine that he took off the mantle that he beat her with. I have chills now just talking about it and thinking about what I observed and what I saw. As the medical examiner was unraveling all of the covers, and we were able to see exactly what condition Dr. Benton was in, everybody in the room was just stunned. I mean, absolute stunned silence.
Evidence at the scene suggested Dr. Benton had been sleeping in bed when she was attacked in the middle of the night by Angel Maturino Resendez.
The initial blow to her head just woke her up, and the fight was on. I really, truly believe she fought back so much that she almost was able to escape, just from the evidence there at the house. She was almost out of the room. Worst thing ever. I mean, every room was gone through. He went everywhere in the house looking for stuff. In his mind, it was his job. Kill people, steal jewelry, take it to Mexico and sell it.
It was right before Christmas. He opened their presents. It was just so awful.
We called more people in. Houston Police Department was called for assistance. Mr. Benton, I had to inform him and call him that there was a body found in his house, and just to hear his voice on the other end, it was just heart-wrenching dealing with that.
Police believe Resendez may have been watching her before the attack.
I have every reason to believe he was watching the homes extensively to know how to get in, when to get in. I don't have much of a doubt that he may have seen Mr. Benton leave with his twin girls the night before for the flight to Arizona to see his parents. Unfortunately, some of the curtains to the upstairs of the Benton home were not shut, and so he could have also seen her walking around up there.
We had DNA because she was sexually assaulted, and we had fingerprints. And we needed to wait for that DNA because it was really new at the time to be developed so it could be put in the database, the national database.
But thanks to the fingerprint evidence, identifying Dr. Benton's killer didn't take long.
We did have an ID within about a week. It was right around either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day when we got the fingerprint results back. Numerous fingerprints were found on jewelry boxes, and also on a piece of the steering column housing that was found in the garage. When Resendez went to flee the scene in Dr. Benton's Jeep, he couldn't find her keys. And so he had to bust the steering column off and get a pair of needle-nose pliers and actually turn a little knob of the ignition. And in doing so, and when he ripped the steering column off, he laid 4 beautiful fingerprints on the bottom of that. So, but we were just scratching the surface as to who he was at that point.
When DNA results came back, the evidence also linked Resendez to the horrific attack of Holly Dunn and Chris Mayer in Kentucky.
I remember my detective coming to my apartment. I lived alone in my apartment. He comes in and he's like, "You might want to sit down. We have a suspect. We know who he is. We're 99.9% sure that it's him." He said he's going to be on America's Most Wanted this weekend, and I want you to watch it, and I want you to see if that's him. So I literally got 20 of my friends in my apartment, and I'm like, "Okay, we're going to watch America's Most Wanted, and you're all going to be here with me." And then they had footage where he was defending himself in court, and his voice. And I was like, that's him, 100%. From his voice, I was like, I could tell you from that voice that that's him 100%.
She's the only one that survived. And I mean, the gory details she told about what he had done was just, you knew that, you know, there was real, true evil in that individual.
March of '99, I flew to D.C. and was a part of America's Most Wanted, trying to get tips from all over the country to have get some exposure and get his face out there to the public. And then Weimer comes up, and we know once the DNA match was made that we had an absolute incredible crime on our hands and a very elusive suspect.
We knew we had a serial killer who was still killing, who was still not apprehended.
On June 21st, 1999, the FBI placed Resendez on its 10 most wanted list under his best-known alias, Rafael Resendez Ramirez. A federal reward of $50,000 was offered for information leading to his arrest, in addition to a $75,000 reward offered in Texas and Kentucky. This came on the same day Resendez was charged in 2 more murders. A week prior, an 80-year-old farmer, George Morger, had been shot to death with his own shotgun at his rural home in Gorham, Illinois, a few yards away from a rail line. His 52-year-old daughter, Carolyn Frederick's body was also found. She had been bludgeoned to death with the same shotgun.
Can't believe he's just a nice old man. He never harmed anybody, and he was an acquaintance of ours and a friend of the family, and it's just terrible.
All of us have not been able to sleep well at night, haven't been able to let the kids out and about without fear of something happening because we didn't know where he was.
All of his victims were just such good people. Not to make a moral judgment on victims, but God, like a minister, a school teacher, a doctor, a farmer and his daughter. I mean, it's just grandmothers. It was just where they lived. They were just unlucky.
In June of 1999, the FBI formed a multi-agency task force in Houston to work to capture Resendez. Investigators made a startling discovery. On June 1st of that same year, an INS border agent stopped Resendez as he was trying to enter New Mexico illegally. They wound up letting him go. He snuck back into the country just days later and wound up killing Josephine Kavitchka and Noemi Dominguez that same week.
I was under the impression that if I got a set of fingerprints to a customs agent, that they would be able to get it to the border and enter in his prints as being a wanted person. I actually gave a good set of his fingerprints to a customs special agent. We found out about it like a week later, and there's his pictures. And I never got an answer from any of the agents of why the prints weren't entered into the system as him being wanted. We had AFIS, the automated fingerprint ID system. It should have been possible in my viewpoint.
The acting inspector general of the U.S. Department of Justice faulted INS for failing to properly train employees on its automated fingerprint system.
We had a lot of really, really good interagency cooperation with the FBI, with customs, with immigration, the ICE agents on the border and so forth. But he just had one heck of a knack of getting through the system.
Sick person.
And he was this far from me, you know, and he was asking me, you know, do you have money?
News coverage of the so-called railroad killer intensified and tips came pouring in.
When you call the command center, your phone call is first answered by the people sitting here. They turn your phone call over to the investigators.
So much of what we got from the public was lookalikes. Resendez had so many different looks. A simple little haircut, glasses. Sometimes he had them on, sometimes he didn't have them on. Sometimes he would gain 20, 30 pounds. The next picture, he's 40 pounds lighter and virtually unrecognizable as what he was beforehand. So that was a big issue, the way the man could change his looks like a chameleon.
In West University Place, Sergeant Ken Maha began to investigate Resendez's past.
I was able to put together a timeline probably from when he was maybe 17 or 18 years old up until present time of how he moved across the country. And that was another obstacle that we had too, because he was so mobile. We believed that he could simply look at a train and know where it's going and know where it's heading just from the markings on it, the kind of freight that was on the train. He was very, very well versed in hopping trains and train travel. He was just all over the Midwest into California and everywhere.
He was like a phantom. You didn't know. He was completely off the grid, just hopping on and hopping off trains. You never knew where he was going to pop up.
He killed the Cernics, went back to Mexico, came back here, killed Miskovitsa, went back to Mexico, and he'd go back to Mexico and come back and come back and back. You know, it was almost a ritual with him. He'd stay there for a week or so and head out again.
Resendez had a criminal history dating back to 1976. He was 17 years old when he was arrested for illegally entering the U.S., but he would keep crossing the border, and records show he was sentenced to prison or jail in the United States 7 times. That includes a 1980 conviction for severely beating an elderly man in Miami. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison for assault and burglary in that case, but was paroled after 5 years. He was also arrested for other crimes like car theft and falsely representing U.S. citizenship. In June of 1999, the FBI made a startling discovery. Resendez had a common-law wife in Mexico. Houston's ABC 13 sent a crew to Resendez's hometown of Rodeo, Mexico, to talk with family and neighbors who may have seen him. Resendez lived in this White House with his common-law wife and their 3-month-old daughter. Julieta Dominguez Reyes claimed she last saw him in June of 1999 and that he had returned from the U.S. for 4 or 5 days. But then, she says, Resendez got a phone call and told her the FBI was looking for him in an old case, so he started packing. She worked as a lab technician at a government-run health clinic. His mother and stepfather lived in a house down the street, and Resendez taught English at a building right in the middle of town square.
What makes Rafael Resendez Ramirez stand out in the United States is the fact he's a suspected serial killer. But here in Rodeo, it's just the opposite. They say that he doesn't go to cantinas, doesn't drink, doesn't even go to dances because his religion won't allow it.
Resendez's common-law wife claims he learned to ride the rails early in life because of family problems at home. She says at age 11, he ran away to Acapulco by himself, then traveled into the U.S. In July of 1999, she agreed to fly to Houston to be interviewed by the FBI.
His wife made a public plea for him to turn himself in. Julieta Dominguez Reyes flew to Houston from Mexico last week to tell the FBI what she knows. She did not want to talk publicly, so FBI agents issued that plea on her behalf.
We knew that the Rangers and FBI had been in touch with, I believe, his sister, and had hopefully worked out an arrangement where he was going to be arrested, but we didn't know. He just sort of sat on pins and needles, hoping that it really worked out.
I was able to talk to his sister in New Mexico. At that time that I talked to her, she did not have a lot of information to offer up.
But it was Resendez's sister in New Mexico who eventually brokered an agreement with Texas Rangers for her brother to turn himself in.
Family members had been in contact with
Resendez Ramirez over the past few days and facilitated the law enforcement effort for the surrender of Ramirez.
For weeks, a Texas Ranger sergeant had been building a relationship with the Resendez family. Then he finally got a call from Resendez's sister in New Mexico. His family had convinced him to turn himself in, something he said he would never do.
Well, Sergeant Drew Carter is the name to know. He's the Texas Ranger who built a relationship with the fugitive's family, and it was him who negotiated the surrender of the alleged railroad serial killer.
Honesty is never hard, and sincerity is something that people sense, and it's not easy to hide that or to covertly suggest that you're being sincere. And that's what I did. I was honest with the family.
I think maybe his family convinced him, because they probably were afraid he'd get killed if they caught him out in the world.
I think the family's motivation was to, in part, was to bring some type of normalcy back to their lives, which they would never ever have had, because I was serious. I know my counterparts were serious. We were not going to stop.
On July 13, 1999, Resendez met with Sergeant Carter on a bridge connecting Zaragoza, Mexico and El Paso, Texas. He rode across the border in a pickup truck driven by his brother and surrendered on the Texas side.
Well, when the individual did approach in the pickup truck, and that's a face that has just been shown all over the country for a long period of time now, and it's a face that I've been working on for better part of 6 months. So when I did see that face, there was a little bit of excitement there, because I finally said this is going to happen. He got out of the truck. Again, you got to remember that up until this point, this is not someone that I've spoken with face to face, and there was things that I was supposed to do to make him come over. The things that I was doing and discussing enabled him to come over, and that happened. And so it's just like anything else. He stuck out his hand, or I stuck out my hand, and we just shook hands. And then I handcuffed him, and he's in custody, and we go on. Business goes on.
He wanted some guarantees before he turned himself in. Kosher food, psychiatric help, and visitation. Okay, sure, we can do all of that. And just to have, to see him walking across that bridge, I just kept thinking he was going to turn around. I mean, I could barely breathe. We were watching it on TV in the office. And just to see him finally, the relief when he got to America. Oh my God, I will never forget that.
The most wanted man in America was finally in custody.
Non-U.S. citizen, is that correct?
No, sir.
Okay. You also have a right to contact the consulate of your native country in respect to these charges. Do you have any question about your rights?
No, sir.
You understand what I've explained to you?
Yes, sir.
After a brief court appearance in El Paso, Resendez was flown to Houston to face charges in connection with Dr. Claudia Benton's murder.
It's just a matter of time before he steps out of that plane and into the patrol cars to have his drive downtown. That is indeed a fact. Here he is coming out of the door right now, dressed in a long-sleeve shirt. His hands are cuffed in front of him. Not a great demeanor about him.
He was placed in a seat, seat belted in. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't move. He either looked out the window the whole trip or slept.
The suspected serial killer Rafael Resendez Ramirez is now downtown at the Houston Police Headquarters.
You can see a lot of people here standing around. We've had quite a crowd here today. The police officers were guarding the road just to make this an easy entrance here.
When he was first caught, he was scrawny and skinny. I was there at HPD headquarters downtown when they brought him in, and I rode up the elevator with him to the laboratory to get DNA samples. I hate to say this, but I could have taken him out in the elevator, and I thought about it for a second, okay? But, you know, then what would that make me? It was a natural reaction from what this guy did.
You had the right to remain silent. You had the right to retain counsel.
They flew him to Houston, and he didn't get in until like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I knew he was going to come to probable cause court, so I stayed up so I could be the one to read probable cause.
Crime scene unit from the Houston Police Department came and processed the scene.
And they brought him in, and he was tanned, ropey muscles. He is a small guy, but super strong looking, and his eyes were just black.
Do you have any questions?
¿Tienes algunas preguntas?
Si todo esto se puede apurar de una vez para dar un culpable, bien, no quiero que se
Can all this be done very quickly so that I can say that I'm guilty?
He was scary. He almost looked like a wild animal. I don't know how to say it any other way.
Does the name Rafael Resendez Ramirez, is that a name that you made up or does it belong to somebody?
Es un tío mío. An uncle of mine.
Very surprised that he gave himself up because he could have stayed in Mexico for a long, long time. He could have kept the charade up a long, long time, and he could have crossed over the border and killed a lot more people.
But during a court appearance in Houston, Resendez said he was unaware he could ultimately face the death penalty when he had turned himself in.
El gobierno de los Estados Unidos nos mintió porque no era el trato de llevarlo a la pena de muerte, si no se hubiera entregado.
When he was in Mexico, you know, if you bring somebody back from Mexico, you agree with the Mexican government that you will not seek death. And so that was why it was critical that Drew Carter, the Texas Ranger, was able to get him to come into Texas so we could seek death.
The manhunt is over. Now the prosecution begins, and it will start right here in Houston.
He's going to be tried in Harris County first, believe me.
DNA samples taken from Resendez in custody matched evidence found at the scene of Dr. Benton's murder. He was indicted for capital murder in her case a week and a half after his surrender. In Weimar, prosecutors were already preparing for a possible trial in the Skip and Karen Cernick murders, but it was determined Resendez would go to trial in Houston the following year for Dr. Benton's murder.
We had an excellent case, and I knew we did. But Colorado County is a small county. We had already talked to the state to see if we could get some help there because it was going to be tremendously expensive. Then when it changed and the trial was in Houston for that murder, we were sort of relieved, but we knew that if anything fell through there, we were on top of it.
Kentucky, up there, they wanted to go ahead and try the case. I'm like, let us seek death. I mean, we will try to get death down here. So we were talking to all the other jurisdictions as well, letting us try it first.
I want to go back over with you your rights again this morning.
By July of 1999, Resendez was charged in 6 murders and suspected in 2 others. Then, a 9th slaying was tied to him. 87-year-old Leafy Mason had been bludgeoned to death with an antique iron inside her home in Hughes Springs, Texas. That was October of 1998. She lived yards away from a rail line, and her body had been wrapped in blankets. Fingerprint evidence found on her window matched Angel Maturino Resendez. He was charged with capital murder in her death.
Lawyers for Resendez don't think their client can get a fair trial in Houston because of all the extensive pre-trial publicity of the case.
Coverage of Resendez's surrender made headlines across the nation.
The jury has been picked. The prosecution is ready to start calling witnesses, but first, a defense motion on moving the trial out of Houston has to be heard, and that may cause another delay in this case.
His court-appointed lawyers argued the trial should be moved outside of Houston.
I came and talked to Mr. Resendez to confirm that that was indeed his desire.
But the judge ruled the trial would go on.
After Judge Harmon independently polled each juror about pretrial publicity, he then quickly denied the change of venue motion.
On May 8, 2000, testimony finally began in Resendez's murder trial. He appeared in court looking so different. Many reporters didn't recognize him.
And by the time we went to court, he was overweight and pasty looking. And I realized he's not a danger in the courtroom. He wasn't a danger once he was in custody. He was killing people while they slept. He was just an opportunistic killer who used whatever weapon was available.
The trial revealed to the world the depths of the railroad killer's depravity. The Harris County District Attorney, Johnny Holmes, personally made the opening statement.
Claudia Benton had not gone to the clinic because she had been stabbed to death, beaten 19 times in the head, causing 4 fractures. Her right arm was broken. She had bruises and abrasions of defensive wounds all over her body, and they later learned she had been physically assaulted and raped.
His court-appointed defense attorney, Alan Tanner, followed. He admitted Resendez was responsible for killing 9 people, including Dr. Benton. But, he argued, Resendez had a serious mental disorder.
The defendant has no remorse for any of these crimes.
defendant, in his mind, thinks that these people are evil and deserve to die.
Resendez sat quietly, emotionless, as his defense team read strange excerpts from jailhouse letters he had written.
If you get to kill a chupacabras, he or she will release microorganism that is to eat bios but not plants.
Resendez wrote a number of letters to the media and those involved in his case.
He wrote me a couple of letters that were very coherent and straightforward. You think you know what you're doing, you don't. I mean, kind of talking about I'm young and that kind of thing. He had a lot of letters before he was caught that were political in nature and very coherent. I mean, he was always objecting to things, I think, if I'm remembering right, the U.S. government and that kind of stuff. But then not until he was incarcerated did the weird stuff happen, like sending fingernails and hair to his defense attorney, and all the weird angel stuff started.
He didn't think he'd done anything wrong by killing Dr. Benton. And his reason for that was because he was half man, half angel, and it was really the angel that made him do it.
A psychiatrist is expected to take the stand today in the murder trial of confessed railroad serial killer Angel Maturino Resendez.
A psychiatrist hired by the defense used some of Resendez's rambling jailhouse letters to the media to enforce his diagnosis of schizophrenia. Some of them had been subpoenaed from TV stations, including this 11-page letter to ABC 13. In it, he talks about an inner demon and says he surrendered because he was afraid the U.S. would put his common-law wife in jail.
He was mentally ill, but we knew he wasn't insane. If you know the difference between right and wrong, it's a very simple way to understand it, but that is the standard. And so we started looking through all of the crimes that we had, showing evidence that he was trying to elude police. I remember with the Weimer case, he unscrewed her porch light and he unscrewed the light bulb inside his car, so when he opened his car door, the light wouldn't come on. Little things like that. There were a million indications like that.
As far as what made him do what he was doing, I don't think anybody knows. I don't think anyone will ever know. I remember almost had to eat my words, but at the crime scene, first found out what all had happened, I made the remark.
Just a sick person. I don't know how else to describe somebody that would.
An individual who does not need to be on the streets.
I realized later that I probably shouldn't have said that, because that provided a defense of insanity for the individual that was going to be tried. When he's doing the things that he did, like setting out the train, you got to have something. When he lays out identification, when he takes trinkets and takes them back to Mexico, all those things, that's a sane individual. He knew what he was doing.
The circumstances of each murder were so horrible, and several of the jurors were crying. But they had to know. They had to know what he had done.
Please don't let this man deceive again. He's a cold-blooded killer.
Once again, I want to emphasize that each and every doctor who examined him did not think he was faking.
The jury ultimately rejected the insanity plea.
Our top story on Eyewitness News at 11:30. After sifting through a mound of physical evidence and after nearly 2 weeks of expert testimony, the jury in the murder trial of Angel Maturino Resendez has finally reached a verdict.
Mr. Resendez, would you please rise? We, the jury, find the defendant Angel Maturino Resendez, also known as Rafael Resendez Ramirez, guilty of capital murder as charged.
And when I talked to the jury afterwards, it is really hard to think that someone who does stuff like he did isn't crazy. It's very hard to understand that there are some people who are very ill, but they still know what they're doing is wrong.
The next step for jurors was determining whether Resendez should face execution.
They have to answer questions. And the first question basically is, do you believe this person will be a continuing threat to society? And if they say, no, we don't, that's a life sentence. But if they say yes, then they go to the next question, which is, looking at all of the evidence in the entire trial, guilt and punishment, do you see anything in it that's mitigating enough to warrant a sentence of life? And if they say, no, we don't, that's a death sentence.
During the punishment phase, jurors heard heart-wrenching testimony from witnesses in other murders Resendez was accused of committing.
What we're going to present, what we're going to tell you about are the people.
So we started with Holly because she was the only survivor.
I wanted justice from the time that this happened. So, I mean, I was going to get my day in court. I had said that all along, like, just put me in front of him.
He did think she was dead.
I really wanted to do it, but then when it actually came to it, I had a nervous breakdown and cried and screamed. And again, cried and screamed. And almost, I don't know if I would have done it had my family not been there with me. They walked me through the door that only the jury had used until that point. And then I just remember my breathing was really shallow. I had trouble breathing. I mean, Devin was like, look straight at me, I'll be right in front of you.
And I was telling her, just look at me, just look at me. Don't, because she was shaking.
I mean, I was crying on the stand from the moment she asked me probably the first question. I remember her first question was like, what did you do last weekend? And I was like, oh, I graduated from college, you know, like, and I was really proud to say I graduated from college and be like, my life went on, you didn't ruin me, you know? And they get to that point where they say, is the person who attacked you in the courtroom today? And so I was like, yes, I know he's here, this is his trial. They say, can you please tell us what he's wearing? And I'm like, I haven't looked at him. When I looked at him, his eyes literally were black and he had no emotion on his face.
He just sat there, but he was very interested. I mean, he was listening. You know, he was totally paying attention to everyone, especially with Holly, I remember.
When Holly got up and she testified, it was over. It was over. You know, she put the nail in his coffin, if you want to say it like that. You know, she's the only one that survived. The gory details she told about what he had done was just, you had to believe her.
Talking about closure, it did do her a world of good to confront him in a powerful way from a position of strength and say, you're the one who did this to me and killed my boyfriend, you know? It was, I mean, you could have heard a pin drop when she was testifying. It was remarkable.
The jury was crying. The judge was crying. I mean, everybody was crying, but he was literally emotionless.
My skin crawled just looking at him. He just, you know, I knew how evil he was. And to have no sense of remorse, you saw no emotion, no nothing.
Seeing him in court, he certainly didn't do himself any favors in trying to, and certainly his attorneys didn't try to humanize him in any way. But I remember seeing him and thinking, being angry, being very angry, especially at the time. I remember reading about the other victims and their different backgrounds, and none of it was a pattern. And I think when we heard the testimony at trial, it made a lot more sense.
That what we have here is a career burglar who's developed a taste for murder and rape.
You know, this person really was not well. I testified because the prosecutors were pursuing the death penalty, and I wanted to say my piece as well.
He went to the bedroom and lifted the covers and found his sister, Noemi.
He did not make eye contact with me, and I did look over there. Since then, you know, I've been a prosecutor, and I'm an attorney now, and I don't think there's any way that you can prepare a witness to look across and see the person. You can certainly let anger fill your heart, but realizing that what I might say, I may not be prepared for what might come out of my mouth.
Do you remember how long the jury took to deliberate over sentencing?
Maybe a little over an hour. Everyone was expecting it. Everyone was expecting it. Once they had the guilty, there was just no other verdict. Just the gruesomeness and the inhumanity of what he did. I mean, there was nobody who didn't think this guy deserved the death penalty. He was the poster child for it.
The Mexican government is now trying to keep Angel Maturino Resendez out of the Texas death chamber. A jury sentenced that Mexican national to die by lethal injection.
Mexican consulate officials immediately supported automatic appeals of his death sentence. In Mexico, capital punishment is not allowed.
He has a fair trial. We respect the laws of this country, but also we have to respect lives.
I remember the tussle with the Mexican government. We made sure, I mean, every T was crossed. I mean, he had every right afforded to him, including really good lawyers appointed to him, great investigator appointed to him.
The concern was that he didn't have any funds to hire a lawyer. He had a court-appointed lawyer at trial, And sometimes the overwhelming power of the state versus an individual, even with means to hire a lawyer, is sometimes overwhelming.
But in 2001, Resendez himself requested that his appeals end and he be executed as soon as possible.
There was an issue whether or not he was competent to waive his appeals, which he wanted to do. And so the court appointed some doctors, and they said that he was competent to waive his appeals, so he waived his appeals.
Resendez even began confessing to more murders that year because he thought it would speed up his execution. Police ultimately concluded Resendez was the prime suspect in at least 6 other killings throughout the 80s and 90s in Florida, Texas, California, and Georgia. In many cases, he provided information only investigators could know, and even led police to the body of a missing runaway teenager in Florida.
He said he wasn't afraid to die because he wasn't going to die.
Former Associated Press correspondent Michael Groszczyk covered the Resendez case from the start and interviewed him on death row in Livingston, Texas.
And what you're trying to do is put a voice with the person. You certainly don't want to glorify him or her. His left arm, right here, was all scarred. I asked the prison folks, and he had a history of self-mutilation. And those were the scars from him continuing to cut himself. I remember that very vividly. And I also asked him if he picked up a nickname on the row. And he said they called him Choo Choo Man. And he smiled at that. And it occurred to me that he was, reveling in the notoriety of his crimes.
In prison, Resendez continued to write letters to the media and sought publicity. He even tried to sell murder memorabilia online.
He's always marketing himself. I got letters in here that we confiscated that he was sending to dealers trying to, offer his hair and offer his autograph and anything that he can find attached to his name that he can make money on.
I had sent it to friends. I had sent it to many people, California and everything, and they went and sell it. This past month that I sent one to my family, but people think that I just went and making money.
While Resendez technically didn't directly receive any money for the things he was trying to sell, murderabilia dealers did. Resendez's offerings were collected by out-of-state dealers who in turn sold the items and sent money to a third party. It's believed Resendez's family in Mexico may have profited.
There's nothing more nauseating and disgusting than to find out the person who murdered your loved ones now has items being hawked by third-party dealers for the world to see simply because they've become famous because they murdered people and now they've achieved infamy and they can make money off of it.
But the family of Dr. Claudia Benton filed and won a lawsuit to stop third parties from making any money off of murderabilia. In 2001, Texas lawmakers passed a law to prevent convicted killers from profiting from their own notoriety.
He was among a minority of inmates who actually acknowledged that he did the killings. He said that he could recall the details of each killing and that it looked to him like he was in a tunnel and it was very quiet and it was kind of in a distance where he could see it, but there was no sound, no noise. We talked about how he got around the country. He knew that if he got on a train that had 6 or 8 engines on it, it was going across the country. I remember him saying it was better than Greyhound. And he was convinced that even though his body may die, he wasn't going to die.
The man known as the Railway Killer today heard a Houston judge label him competent enough to be put to death next week.
In 2003, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals affirmed Resendez's conviction and death sentence. Every other appeal in state and federal court was denied.
Then the next stage would be whether you're competent to be executed. That's the stage where we came in.
An execution date was set for May of 2006.
We actually got hired in 2006, so we didn't have a lot of time to work.
The Mexican government brought in defense attorney Jack Zimmerman to review the Resendez case.
The general counsel is located here in Houston, and they contacted some local lawyers that specialized in capital cases. We decided to answer the call and talk to the General Counsel of Mexico. They agreed to fund some top psychiatrists and psychologists in the country to see if there was an issue of competency.
Resendez's new defense team brought in 2 mental health experts to examine him.
Dr. Stewart was from California. He was one of the finest in the country. Constitutionally, in this country, we don't execute people who are not competent. You have to understand that there's an execution scheduled. You have to know when the execution is scheduled. He reported back to us that there was no question that Mr. Resendez was not competent to be executed. He didn't understand any of those 3 things. And we hired another doctor named Puente, Dr. Puente from Arizona. He came in, did the same kind of evaluation, and reported also in his to a degree of medical certainty on how Resendez was not competent to be executed.
Both doctors said Resendez suffered from paranoid schizophrenic delusions.
Mr. Resendez did not understand that he was going to die. His reason for not understanding that, in our view, and in the doctor's view, 3 of the doctor's views, was that he didn't understand that he was going to die. He rejected that. He said he was half man and half angel, and that he couldn't be killed. And it was the angel that was in him at the time that he killed this doctor that he was convicted of killing that made him do it.
Resendez's defense team quickly filed a motion that delayed his May execution.
And that led to this hearing that we had called a competency hearing. There were 2 issues at the hearing. The first was, did he really believe that he couldn't be killed, that he wouldn't die? Or the second issue was he malingering, which is a fancy term for was he faking all this? We thought he was not mentally competent. Absolutely no doubt in our mind, or we wouldn't have proceeded. We wouldn't have filed the motion in the first place. The guy was not here. All right, his mind was somewhere else.
The state was allowed to hire 2 of its own mental health experts, and the court also appointed 2 more experts.
So we had 6 experts who were going to make an opinion as to whether or not he was competent. The majority of these experts believed that he was suffering from some type of a mental illness. The only one who thought that he was, quote, normal, saw him for like 1 hour and 16 minutes on one visit and 1 hour and 24 minutes on the other. And yet he came up with a challenge that contradicted these others who spent 6 and 8 hours each, multiple times with multiple doctors. And then the 6th doctor didn't even show up for trial. The doctors that came down on the side of that he's competent were the ones that Judge Harmon went with.
The execution date was just days after the judge's ruling, on June 27th, 2006.
Angel Macareno Resendez goes to the death chamber at 6 o'clock tonight up in Huntsville.
He is a man that has been busy today, brought this morning from death row at the Polensky unit in Livingston to here in Huntsville. He has also been busy with visitors. He has seen his mother and also his 7-year-old daughter, spending time with them this morning.
When you get in there, the inmate is already on the gurney, strapped down. He can see you. You can see him. You can hear him. There's a microphone over his face. At the edge of the gurney, he had this nervous twitch on his foot, and he continued to move it that way. That struck me. I hadn't seen that before. At least it's very unusual.
There are 7 different family members from different victims of Mr. Resendez that are scheduled on the list to witness the execution, as well as several members of Resendez's own family.
He did ask for forgiveness. So he's looking at George Benton, and he's looking at the Cernick's relatives. Asked if you had a last statement. He said, "Yes, sir. I want to ask if it is in your heart to forgive me." And he's looking at the witnesses. "You don't have to. I know I allowed the devil to rule my life. I just ask you to forgive me and ask the Lord to forgive me for allowing the devil to deceive me. I thank God for having patience with me. I don't deserve to cause you pain. You did not deserve this. I deserve what I am getting." Then they start administering the drugs. It's very quick, and it's like watching someone go to sleep.
The man known as the railroad killer has been executed. Angel Resendiz was put to death by lethal injection after his final appeal was rejected.
He was very manipulative. He was a very smart man. He knew how to manipulate society, knew how to manipulate our system, and so I found it to be very shallow.
That was justice for everyone. And I remember the night he got executed. I was a judge by then, and this may sound morbid to people, but and just so be it. But I can't tell you how much I despised him. And so I bought a bottle of champagne and I toasted the TV when I watched them reporting live from Huntsville that he had been executed.
You know, he killed a minister and his wife, and I'm glad he's dead.
Whether it was true justice, I don't know. You know, how do you define true justice? The families are never going to get those people back. You can't do anything about that.
I think what my family felt more than anything was relief that we didn't have to worry about this person being out there. Ultimate judgment is going to come from somebody far more powerful and more important than us. And we should not have evil or hatred in our hearts. We can only just try to be good people.
After coming face to face with evil, Resendez's only living survivor chooses to live her life helping other people who have faced abuse.
So I was going out speaking. I get asked to do a safety talk during recruitment at the University of Kentucky. I can't tell you the empowering feeling that it had. I cried through almost the entire thing. I had it written down exactly what I was going to say word for word. I cried. It was so empowering. I mean, it was like an energy that I can't explain. When you start getting that story outside of you, it loses its control over you. You are then in control of it. So I'm like, anybody that wants to hear me, I'll talk. It's funny because I'd gotten to that point in my speaking, especially in my hometown, where I would speak and they'd say, we'd love to help you. What can we do? Who can we give money to? Who do you support? What do you want? While I'm figuring that out, I get the phone call of a person calling me saying, hey, you know what? We want to start this advocacy center in Evansville and we want to name it after you. Would that be okay? And so I told him, I'm like, you can name it after me, but I need to get a little bit more involved than just you having it named after me. So if that's okay, like we can do this.
So Holly's House is a non-residential child and adult victims advocacy center, and we provide support for survivors and their families who have survived intimate crimes, and then we prevent abuse before it begins with our school-age prevention program.
It's been amazing to see her get married and have kids, and that she has decided that she needs to live her life in honor of the other victims who weren't able to survive. She was driven to lead her life. The first time I heard her say that, I just cried.
This was the night that I won the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Award. It was an outstanding award for community service.
Holly helped to bring the community around this concept, and she helped to fill the gap for victims here in this community, and now in 8 counties we're working to help that. We're serving 821 victims in a year.
While those who were lost will forever be missed, their impact on the world and those who knew them will never be forgotten.
I still miss him. I still think about him. Every once in a while I reach for the phone because I want to call in and tell him some piece of good news or get some piece of advice. And I miss that opportunity.
We gave our firstborn son, the middle name Christopher. And I'm lucky that I have a husband who, I mean, I'm sure he wishes that he could have met Chris. And I mean, keeping pictures of him around, and, you know, my kids know that that's mommy's friend that went to heaven, and that, you know, that's what they know for now, and that's fine. Chris's last words to me is everything's going to be okay. And I've always said, like, everything was okay for me, but not for him. Like, he was saying it to me. He'll always be part of our lives.
You know, I think if my sister had lived, I'm curious to see what her next venture would be. Would she have gone back to graduate school? Would she have stayed in Houston? But I like to think that she was probably the type that would have gone on to become a college professor. She loved shaping minds. She's the type of person that, if she had extra time, she would be helping somebody, whether it was a friend or a stranger. We've all learned from Noemi that you've got to live life. You've got to just go out there and live it.
My name is Kellyanne Cox. I had been abducted, raped, murdered, dumped, and buried.
How scared she had to have been.
He has no remorse for killing the girls.
What could be a nightmare comes true for some Tiki Island parent.
I know something's happened because this is just not her. This is out of the ordinary.
Searchers could barely put one foot in front of the other.
Laura asked to go for a run, and then she didn't come back. We knew something was wrong.
But our top story tonight, a man and his dog discovered a badly decomposed body.
It was on TV that Tiffany was missing. Her car was abandoned after he killed her and raped her. He just dumped her like a bag of trash.
He's a monster. He's a predator.
Not just any monster for me. That's the monster who took away my mom.
William Lewis Reese. You have the right to remain silent, not make any statement at all.
He eluded the police, at least for 19 years.
William Reese had a criminal history, which included aggravated kidnapping.
We brought Reese out there, had him demonstrate to us how he buried the bodies in.
I'm telling you the truth. Tell me the truth, Bill.
He gives a version of the truth to make himself look better.
He was only giving us shades of the truth.
I started choking her. She was still fighting me, and I grabbed that rope and wrapped it around her.
William Reese was more like a wild animal.
State of Oklahoma versus William Reese.
He knew that justice was coming. The time was up.
There's an old saying in the law, justice delayed is justice denied. I sentence you to death.
I don't expect him to say sorry.
I'm not taking my death penalty off. I still stand by that.
Stay tuned to see what Reese's next move is.
I think he got another ace or two up the sleeves.
4 young women each disappear with no explanation. One had gone out for a jog, another had been at a theater cast party, a third on a college field trip, and another vanished from a car wash. For almost 2 decades, their families searched for answers about what really happened to them until a stunning confession from a Texas prison.
Laura she was beautiful. You know, there's some people who are touched by light, and Laura was certainly one of those people. Everyone who knew Laura loved Laura. She was incredibly smart. She could have done anything. She had so much to contribute. It would have been an amazing thing to see what she would have done in life if she had been allowed to live.
But our top story tonight, she's only 12 years old, and at this hour, she's missing. Did she just wander off, or is there foul play involved?
On the morning of April 3rd, 1997, Gay and Bob Smithers' lives changed forever.
We were homeschooling at the time, and so I started making breakfast, and Laura asked to go for a run. That was highly unusual, because Laura did not like running, but she had been inspired to do cardio for her ballet. Ballet was her great love. And so she asked to go running, and it never occurred to me that it would be dangerous.
Their 12-year-old daughter, Laura, was the light of their lives. She was a gifted student and an aspiring ballerina who had just been accepted into the Houston Ballet Academy.
And I also thought, oh, well, she won't be out there very long. And then she didn't come back. We knew something was wrong right away.
She used to ride her bike when I would run, so I would know more or less where she would have gone. So I checked that very quickly, and she wasn't there. So came back and called the police.
Within 10 minutes, the policeman was here at the house taking our missing person report. And by that evening, I mean, I'd made a number of phone calls to get more people to come help, and we had spent the day searching all over the area.
Did you see anything unusual at this time yesterday?
Yesterday, no, not at all.
And by that night, the media had got wind of it.
Her parents say she went out for an early morning jog in the neighborhood of 9 o'clock this morning along this very road and simply never came back.
And so all the trucks had already shown up, and helicopters were circling the house, and the next morning there were hundreds and hundreds of people. And Very quickly, leaders within our community stepped up and organized the search.
Searchers could barely put one foot in front of the other.
I've been overwhelmed by the community support and the police.
What was it like for you and your family last night?
Don't ask me.
She is a very good girl. Something very unusual has happened that she would have been home. There's no question she would have been home.
So many of our dear friends now we met out of that search.
I have 4 children of my own and I can't imagine being in this position.
They were extraordinary.
I've got 3 nieces. I'd hate for it to happen to one of them.
Everyday people who just step forward, mothers and fathers.
Yeah.
People from the community who didn't know Laura. I mean, many of them did.
I just want to let her know that we are going to find you. And we're not going to stop until we do find you.
But many more of them didn't.
We offer it to you and pray that you would watch over Laura wherever she is.
I was a family friend, still a family friend of Bob and Gabe Smithers. I got a call from one of the Cub Scout leaders asking me to run a search the next morning, April 8th. I showed up the next morning out on Moore Road. It was a whirlwind, and everybody got caught up in it. The city and people from all over Houston put their lives on hold and came and tried to find Laura. And then I ended up running the search some way. How? It just happened. I don't know.
The desperate search for a 12-year-old girl in Friendswood is on this afternoon. Now police are calling it an abduction. The FBI has joined the case.
Alan, FBI is here, Coast Guard is here, the National Guard is here, but what has been most impressive is just the volunteer effort that we have seen from this community.
6,000 people, it was estimated, searched for Laura. It still makes me cry. That's a tiny example of the tremendous compassion that the community had.
But 1 week passed, and then 2, with no sign of Laura. On Sunday, April 20th, the community crowded into the auditorium at Friendswood High School for an update on the search.
Obviously, we're encouraged when there are new leads, but we wait for the final phone call that says that they found Laura.
During that town hall meeting, the chief received a page. I think everybody in that room knew something had happened.
I was sitting next to the police chief at that time named Jared Stout, and he got his phone buzzed and he looked over at me and frowned and said, "Mike, I gotta go."
We all knew. We just knew. We didn't know what, but we knew something had happened.
But our top story tonight, a man and his dog discover the badly decomposed body of what authorities say is a young girl. The discovery made in a sector that had been part of the search for Laura Kate Smith.
And it was probably around 10 o'clock that night that the chief came that night to say that a body had been found.
After 17 days, Laura's body turned up at the edge of a retention pond in Pasadena, Texas, about 12 miles from where she'd gone missing. The only clothing she had on was a pair of socks. The Harris County Medical Examiner's Office determined she had been beaten, and there were signs of strangulation.
And of course, we immediately refused to believe it. And then it took until noon the next day. They came back to say that the identification was made, and he said, "It is our girl."
The young woman found off Beltway 8 is Laura Kate Smither. The Smither family is in seclusion. Once again, they ask for your understanding, and privacy is what they wish most at this time.
Friendswood was heartbroken, shocked, and left in fear of a predator on the loose. Police began to question anyone who had been in the same area as the Smither home on the morning of April 3rd.
It came up that there was this man in the area who was a sex offender, and they brought him in for questioning.
His name was William Lewis Reese, a 38-year-old construction worker who had served time in prison in Oklahoma for rape. He had just been released the previous year.
William Reese was actually an equipment operator, and he was working in the Windsor Estates subdivision located off of West Parkwood Avenue here in the city. Rained that day, so there wasn't work. I think he showed up for work, but he was released early.
He had left the construction site approximately at the same time Laura Smithers ended up disappearing, and then he comes back by about 30 minutes later.
And who can place him there?
We have eyewitnesses that can place him at that location.
But William Reese was always the #1 suspect. We just had to be able to make a case on him. But part of the process was going back and eliminating, make sure all those other suspects were eliminated, which was a long, drawn drawn-out process.
He was on their radar very early on, but they didn't have anything to link him to Laura.
On the campus of the University of North Texas, it's hard not to notice this stunning bronze memorial depicting a mother and child.
There's just this wonderful presence when I'm out here talking to her, you know. Sometimes I'll just sit. If people come by while I'm out here, I usually talk to them about it so that it will resonate even more with them.
Jan Bynum comes out here often to talk to her daughter, Kelly. She was a 20-year-old student at UNT and a young mom. On July 15, 1997, she took a field trip to the Denton jail with her criminology class. Then she vanished.
The instructor had told them they shouldn't bring anything in. Have somebody drop them off, take a cab, use a hide-a-key, do something. She used a hide-a-key. After the tour, and she called her boyfriend, her words were, "The key won't work." And we'd tried the key, or she and her boyfriend had tested the key the night before, and everything was fine. To this day, we don't know. We didn't find the key. We didn't find the hide-a-key box. None of that. Her request to him was to help her get into her car, and when he got there, her car was there, but we've never seen her since.
And you knew that she would not just leave because she had a little girl at home.
I knew she wouldn't.
How old was Alexis?
Alexis was 19 months old.
Kelly was 20.
They used to have to beg to babysit me. She would take me everywhere. They could not get me out of her arms.
She had Alexis very young, but she was very focused, knew she wanted to get her degree. That's why she was in summer school. She had a time frame set. She wanted to graduate in May of '98 and then start working on her master's because she was majoring in psychology with a minor in criminal justice.
She would have graduated with honors. There was no doubt. And Niles, my dad, well, Jan's husband, and Kelly's stepfather, who raised her since she was 12, and he struggled probably the most out of all of us.
How did the lion go?
24 years after Kelly's disappearance, her daughter Alexis is now a student at the University of North Texas herself. She was raised by Kelly's parents.
All I told her growing up and over the years is, your mommy is lost, and we've got a lot of people looking for her. We don't know where she is, but there's lots of people looking for her.
Why'd you take that off? After getting a picture for everybody to see.
My earliest memory is looking underneath the bed for her, looking around the room. So that's what I can remember of my mom.
Alexis has been a godsend. So, because right from the get-go, she was my focus. You know, I do have a job, and Kelly, I promise you I'll take good care of her the best I can.
I thank God every day that I was lucky enough to have grandparents who were right there and said yes, yes. People always wonder, how was your childhood? It was normal. It was completely normal.
She was my best friend. We could talk. We could open up with each other. We could talk grown-up talk. I know a lot of times I find myself going, Kelly, you would be so proud of Alexis. But also then, I always tell her, don't worry, honey, we're going to get justice. We will see it through.
I know early on they thought William Reese was potentially a suspect, right?
They did. They did because he was on the sex offenders list, and that's when they were able to locate a receipt at one of the gas stations that showed he was in Denton on that day. So that got them real interested. They got Kelly's fingerprints though, and they did check his truck or car or whatever it was very carefully and didn't find any fingerprints, any of Kelly's fingerprints or anything like that anywhere on the car.
We never stopped putting Kelly's face on the TV. We never stopped all these years. We have never stopped.
Do you come out here a lot?
Yeah. I mean, I know she's not here,
but she knows that we're here. We're thinking of her. She was 19. She was very energetic and very determined. She never seen a stranger. I mean, she'd talk to anybody going down the street because she's brought up in a small town, you know, and everybody knew everyone. So Tiff and I was really close because everywhere I went, she was with me. Everyone said it was my shadow, was because she was there with me everywhere.
Tiffany Johnston was a newlywed who had just moved to the Oklahoma City suburb of Bethany when she disappeared in 1997.
She was going to go to college in the fall, and she was going to study plants because she loved working with plants. One of her summertime jobs one year was working for a landscaper. She went with her grandfather to the farm to help him with his garden. All the kids, that was part of their routine. You have to help Grandma and Grandpa because they lived here, we lived here, so you have to go out and help them. Tiffany and Ryan had moved to Bethany because of the crime rate wasn't so big. She went to work at El Chico's, which is a restaurant, and she worked there till 2 o'clock. She got off work there, and then she went to Sight and Sound, which is like a Best Buy or something like that. And when she got off work there, she went to the house and got cleaned up, and then she was gonna meet Ryan, and they were gonna go celebrate their 3-month anniversary. And so she went to wash her car.
But the car wash was the last time anyone saw Tiffany alive. Later that night, her husband Ryan went out to search for her after she didn't come home.
And around midnight, the Bethany PD called me and wanted to know if Tiffany was with me because her car was abandoned at the car wash. And that didn't sound like Tiffany at all. I mean, she didn't do that. Her pager, back then the pagers was the thing, and her pager was left in her car because I blew it up paging her and saying 911. That meant call immediately. And then I got a hold of Ryan. I did him the same way with his pager. The Bethany Police Department called back and said that they had gotten a hold of Ryan and it was Tiffany's car, which that wasn't no-brainer because her ID was in the car, her paycheck was in the car, her money was in the car. The doors on her car was open. She had her mats on the hanger so she could wash them. Everything was there. We really didn't know what to figure because it was just a shock to us. There was people that seen her at the car wash, but they didn't see anything happen, which is really strange because that is really a busy car wash, or it was back then. We got up, went to Bethany, which is about an hour and a half's drive from Anadarko, and the police have it all taped off, and all they would say is, we think she's been abducted. I go, oh, no, not my kid, you know. That's parents' worst dream is their child missing. Then about, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Bethany PD called and wanted to know if Tiffany had any tattoos or birthmarks or jewelry because they were looking for 3 other girls at the same time as Tiffany. And then I go, yeah, she's got a belly button pierce and she has a birthmark. And they said, okay, well, it's not her. And I'm going, yeah, it is. Or you wouldn't be calling asking me this stuff. I know better than this. And then that evening, they come to knock on the door and to tell us that it was Tiffany that they found.
Tiffany's body turned up during a search for another missing woman. She'd been dumped in a ditch off of Interstate 40 near Yukon, Oklahoma, about 10 miles away. An autopsy showed she had been strangled.
We know that she was sexually assaulted. We know that she was received some trauma about her head and shoulder areas.
Had to go tell Grandma and Grandpa. Grandpa took it very hard, which we knew he would. And he goes, why didn't God take me? Why did God not take me and not leave Tiffany? That was his main thing, was whine. She had lots of big dreams. She would have succeeded in them if she'd been given more time. She didn't have no children or anything. She's been dead longer than she was alive, and that's really sad. Someone took her life before it was her time.
Laura Smither disappeared Thursday morning. An emotional day for a group of volunteers.
What could be a nightmare comes true for some Tiki Island parents.
Their 17-year-old daughter has been missing for more than 24 hours, and police say this is no runaway.
I know something's happened because this is just not her. This is out of the ordinary. Even the neighbors know that this is not like Jessica.
In the early morning hours of August 17, 1997, Jessica Kane's mother woke up in a panic when she realized her daughter had never come home from a theater cast party the night before.
When I woke up and I realized she wasn't here, and I woke her father, immediately put in 2 calls to some of the friends that was in the play with her last night at Harbor House, and found out that she had left at 1:30, that they saw her leave at 1:30 headed home. And that's when I immediately began to panic, because I knew that something had happened. Too much time had lapsed from the time she'd left, they had last seen her, and the time that I realized she wasn't home.
17-year-old Jessica had been out celebrating at a Bennigan's restaurant after performing in a production of Oklahoma at Harbor Playhouse Community Theater.
She loves the theater. The theater is such a stress release, and Jessica was so outgoing and so uplifting and energetic and bubbly that she just had so much energy for everybody, and always happy.
There was another cast party member who had a sister that lived down the street. She asked Jessica to go with her down there to her sister's apartment, and she did, rode with her in her vehicle. Then they came back from there, and she was dropped off behind her pickup, and they watched her get in the pickup, then watched her get on the feeder, well, on the access, the access off Bay Area to get on 45 feeder road, and that's the last time I ever saw her.
Jessica's castmates spotted her leaving the Bennigan's parking lot around 1:30 in the morning. Hours later, her father found her truck abandoned along the side of Interstate 45 in the city of Lamarck, with her wallet still inside. She was nowhere in sight.
I don't think the truck was the problem, and if the truck had been a problem, I really think Jessica would have sat in the truck and waited for us to come. I've thought about that already, and I don't think Jessica would have gotten out of the truck to walk.
Her vehicle was pulled over, and it was, a stretch of 45 that is dark, and she's a 17-year-old young lady, and it just didn't feel good at all. Because she was not that far from home, from the exit to Tiki. Back then they didn't have cell phones or anything, but it was scary. It was a terrible feeling.
She vanished only 1 week before she was sent to begin her freshman year at Sam Houston State University.
We were supposed to take her to Sam Houston and move in Sunday morning, and I thought that would be the hardest thing to let go. She's an only child, and I thought that would be really hard to let her go off to college, and now I realize that will be really easy to let her go off to college.
Jessica had a journal, and I interviewed all her friends, I interviewed her teachers, I interviewed the directors at the play. I'd interviewed so many people, so I got to know about her. She was really a delightful person. She was funny, very spontaneous, very creative with words.
Lamarck Investigations asked if I would go into, or we would, several of us would go and see if we could find anything that might have Jessica's DNA, hairbrush, toothbrush, something of that nature, so that in the event that she was found, that we would have that. And I remember going in there, and it was surreal. I can remember it like it was yesterday, that her things were packed in her room because she was leaving for college that next weekend, Sam Houston.
Volunteers spent weeks searching. Even Laura Smither's parents joined in on the search.
And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
This has to be the hardest thing that they have done since they have lost their child, because they have personally are having to relive every moment with everything that they went through with Laura.
It's a nightmare relived. It's very painful. I've told her to keep her faith. That she must never talk about her daughter in the past tense. She must never give up her hope.
I went ahead and did the paperwork and all that.
Michael Barker, who was volunteer director at the Laura Recovery Center, heard about the search for Jessica and agreed to help. He got to know her parents and later became licensed as a private investigator.
I get a call from Gay Smither, and she said they just gotten a call from a family in Texas City whose daughter went missing. They were going to go down there and they wanted me to go, and I really didn't want to go because I was being just sucked in deeper and deeper to this whirlwind. And I told guys, I said, this is a complete different deal. This girl's 17, she's not 12. It's a freeway deal. This girl could be anywhere by now, you know. And she said, well, we're going to go and we want you to go with us. I had trouble always saying no to these families. How do you do it after what they've been through? I said, as terrible as it is, we know where Laura is. CH and Susie, they're in a complete different place. They don't have a clue.
But despite a massive community search effort, no sign of Jessica ever turned up.
They'll describe these cases as roller coasters, ups and downs and up and down. There was never an up. It's always was down until they found her.
We're having to learn patience. That is a very, very hard lesson to learn, to be patient and wait, be still and wait on God.
It's very common for victims of trauma not to remember because the mind protects itself. So when you can put your conscious mind at rest, then you can retrieve the information from the subconscious.
Former Tiki Island Police Chief Sue Dietrich Nance will never forget the summer of 1997. Just after Jessica Kane went missing, she was asked to help in the case of Sandra Sepa, a 19-year-old who was abducted outside of a Waffle House in Webster, Texas. She managed to escape her attacker.
I was a forensic hypnotist, and Webster PD called and asked if I would come and hypnotize her because she was so traumatized. She had escaped the kidnapper and jumped out of his vehicle on 45 and sustained quite a few injuries. She was so traumatized there was very little she could recall.
Under hypnosis, she says Sepa was able to recall key details about her attacker.
She said that she pulled up in front of the convenience store on Nassau Road 1 early morning hours. She went in, she bought some items. She left the parking lot. She drove across the street to the Waffle House, and he drove up next to her and asked her if she needed some help. And she said that she asked him why, and he said because you have a flat tire. So it was shortly after that that, she was forced into his truck at knife point. This is what she's telling me under hypnosis. And so he started driving northbound on 45, and at one point he told her to take her clothes off. And she said she bent down to untie her shoes, and she realized that the door was unlocked to the truck. And so that's when she started trying to get out of the truck. And he grabbed her, and for several miles she was drugged on the pavement, and then finally was able to get away from him.
On the freeway? On the freeway, 45.
I think she knew the peril that she was in, and she made a life or death decision by choosing to go and exit the vehicle on Interstate 45.
It wasn't until weeks after the hypnosis that Sue Dietrich Nance made a chilling connection about the person Sandra Sepa had been describing.
I stopped by Friendswood Police Department and spoke with the chief there, and I asked him about the prime suspect in Laura Smithers' case, and he told me about who they suspected. They just didn't have enough evidence. And I left his office and went home, and about 3 o'clock in the morning I woke up and I thought, oh my God, That's who Sandra Sapal described, was William Reese. And I called the station, had him call me, and I said, she described William Reese. She described his truck. She described the way he looked. I also hypnotized a store clerk there who told me under hypnosis about she saw him in front of the store with his truck parked next to Sandra Sapal's car. They went and picked William Reese up, brought his truck to the station, and they put him in a live lineup and she picked him out.
Inside William Reese's truck, investigators found strong evidence.
During her hypnosis, I asked her to describe the inside of the vehicle and of the truck, the dash, if there was anything unusual. And she said that on the glove box there was a piece of paper that had numbers written on it. And I asked her if she could tell me what those numbers were. And she said, well, there's only about 4 or 5 that I can read, and I can't read anymore. And so she gave me those numbers, and that's all she could give me. So when Webster went to get him, on his truck, on the dash, on the glove box of his truck, and there was Post-it notes. One was overlapping the other, and you could only see about 4 or 5 numbers of a phone number. That's why she couldn't see the rest under hypnosis.
Reese's criminal record included 2 rapes in Oklahoma, both in 1986.
He was supposed to be in jail on a 25-year sentence and only did 9.5 years of that 25-year sentence.
After his release in 1996, Reese found work shoeing horses and working construction.
He hauled heavy equipment. He hauled lowboy trailer, put a lowboy trailer attached to his dually truck, and he would haul front end loaders, caterpillars, those kind of things. And he was, he would be all over the state. He would go back and forth to Oklahoma from Texas, but his work took him to many different cities in Texas.
Reese was charged with aggravated kidnapping in Sandra Sapal's case. He also became a suspect in the kidnapping and rape of a 22-year-old woman who says Reese saw her at a gas station in North Houston late one night and followed her.
She feels like there's something wrong with her car, like she might have a flat. And so then she sees what she later describes as a truck pull in behind her. And she sees this man walking up. She gets out. She starts to step out of her vehicle, and she sees this man walking towards her, who she would later describe as William Reese. She was dragged into the woods and beaten and strangled and sexually assaulted, and she says that she thinks he thought she was dead.
Although she did escape and later picked Reese out in a police lineup, he was never charged in her attack. But he did go on trial in 1998 in the Sandra Sapal case.
Think you're being unfairly treated, Mr. Reese?
Yeah, I do.
How so?
About the press. You're going all out of proportion. I didn't do nothing. And they know what friends would know.
Sandra Sapal took the stand to describe the terrifying assault. Sue Dietrich Nance also testified.
There were several things that Chief Stout shared with me. The description. Also that William Reese had criminal history, which included aggravated kidnapping, forcible sodomy, and sexual assault.
Breaking news tops live at 5 this afternoon. It's happening right now down at the criminal courthouse.
Convicted kidnapper William Reese has been sentenced to 60 years in prison. A jury made that decision just a few moments ago.
And we can tell you that when that sentence came down, William Reese did not bat an eye in district court. He just stood there. His lawyer said immediately when the judge asked, will there be an appeal? Yes, they will.
Did you expect
More leniency? Well, no, I really didn't expect to be convicted, really.
Are you saying then that the women who say that you attacked them are lying?
Yeah, I would say that.
What about your victims in Oklahoma? I mean, you saw these people in Oklahoma, you were convicted. Anything to say to any of these people at all?
But while Reese went to prison for kidnapping, the families of Laura Smither, Kelly Cox, Tiffany Johnston, and Jessica Kane still had no answers.
I was the one that pushed, because if I hadn't, we wouldn't have been where we are today. Because Tiffany, no one would have pushed any harder than Mom.
For years after Tiffany's murder, Kathy Dobry refused to give up her fight for justice.
Days turned to weeks, turned to years. I mean, all this time where you're just like, are getting any leads?
Oh, no. No, it was always, well, you need to talk to such and such. Well, such and such didn't know anything. And then I'd call the newspaper, or I'd call the news station. Okay, it's the anniversary date, let's do something.
Then in 2012, Dobry called the new director at the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, asking for help in Tiffany's case.
I called and he goes, I've been waiting on you. I've got an agent that I'm going to assign just to Tiffany's case. Lynn Williams got our case, and he started from scratch. He's got all the evidence, all the paperwork, everything together.
It was a big whodunit case, is what we call them in law enforcement. You start with the husband, the ex-friends that she had, the close associates she had, and none of that panned out, and that's when it went cold.
But the OSBI was able to identify Reese as a potential person of interest.
One of the big things that brought William Reese into the radar screen of OSBI, apparently doing an interview, and he had made the statement that Oklahoma was trying to pin the Tiffany Dobry case on him. Well, someone from Texas called OSBI headquarters and asked if we had a Tiffany Dobry homicide that we're working on. And she had been married since then. She went by the name of Johnston, or her married name. So when they said Dobry, nobody recognized it until they got thinking a few hours later, said, no, that's Tiffany Johnston. That's where Oklahoma first started looking at William Reese as a potential person of interest.
Reese, as it turned out, had met Kathy Dobry before.
You actually knew his mother. Can you talk about how you knew his mother?
His mother did my ironing for me. When I went to work to pay for Tiffany's wedding, then you had to have a uniform, and I'm not an ironing person. So she did my ironing for me. That was how I met her.
So you got to know her, and then you knew her son.
Yeah. When he got out of jail, because he was in prison at the time before Tiffany, in '96 he got out on a technicality. So when he got out, she introduced me to him, this is my son. Well, I didn't think about asking, what was he in jail for? I mean, they acted like it was no big deal. And I don't remember him going, a big deal about him being in prison or going to prison, even though it's a small town. That was one missed by me. I think I was probably too busy keeping up with my older two kids. He went to Texas a lot.
He did? Okay.
Yeah, because he has a ex-wife and 2 kids down there.
Then in 2015, a break finally came in Tiffany's case.
Next thing I did is go to our laboratory and look at and examine what evidence we actually still have in a case and what could be tested. The advancements of DNA technology. There was the swabs that was collected from the state medical examiner's office doing autopsies. We discussed with the lab, and they thought it'd be worth a try to retest those with the new technology, and that's where the DNA profile came back that matched William Reese.
On top of the DNA match, the OSBI was in touch with Friendswood Police. Reese was still the #1 suspect in Laura Smithers' death.
2014 is actually when we began a cold case review. We had some discussion that probably a good case to pull apart would be the Laura Smithers case.
Friendswood Police began looking into old evidence, including William Reese's phone records.
There were several document collections that took place back in the 1997 period. Some were on a consent to search at the house that he was staying at back in 1997, which another, was his truck. And, you know, he had phone bills and he had receipts, gas receipts, you know, that really became, you know, the documentation, and it helped us put the timeline together.
Part of the phone records tracks him to Oklahoma the day before Tiffany Johnston's disappearance and puts him in close proximity to her location where the abduction took place. And the next day, it tracks him going back to Texas. So these are phone calling cards. So back when you used to have a credit card for a phone.
A phone card is something, or it was almost like a credit card that you could use, had an account number, your own account number, and you could go to a payphone and actually punch in your account number along with the phone number you was calling, and you can make a phone call without having to use a quarter. So the phone company would basically issue you it's like a little credit card. They would charge it to your phone account.
It's good investigative work that Friendswood was doing that helped us in our case.
In September of 2015, William Reese was charged in Oklahoma City with the kidnapping and murder of Tiffany Johnston.
Why would he want to kill Tiff? Why would he want to beat her up? Why would he cut her? Why would he rape her? You know, this is my baby. The DNA is what he couldn't very well say, well, I didn't do it, even though he did say he didn't kill Tiffany at first. He called the house after, I don't know, a few days later, after Tiffany told me he was sorry to hear about my daughter and that he didn't kill her. When you have a house full, I mean, we did not have standing room in our house. That was how many people were at the house. You don't think about, you know, well, that's weird to say. You got people, you got funeral arrangements, your daughter just died, you have another daughter that's due to have a baby.
What a bizarre thing to say.
That's all he said, was he just called to tell me he was sorry and that he didn't kill Tiffany, that his mom had called him to tell him. His mom, which she was doing my ironing before Tiffany was murdered, and she did Tiffany's clothes for her funeral services. I think she knew that he killed Tiffany because we got all kinds of little trinkets. It was on Tiffany's grave, just on her anniversary date. And after his mom passed away, well, they quit.
So every anniversary of her passing.
Mm-hmm.
So did he ever meet Tiffany, or?
No, not that we can pinpoint.
Do you think he'd identified her and was seeking her out?
It could have been because I always talked about Tiff. Oh, Tiff's doing this, or we got this for the wedding, or, you know. She was a baby, grade school, high school, and then we did glamour shots together. We had seen a picture of Tiff. I'm sure he knew who she was, even though he said at first he didn't know who she was and that he didn't do it.
But just before Reese was charged in Tiffany Johnston's murder, a stunning development. Reese started confessing to other killings in an attempt to make a deal.
I couldn't get my windshield wipers to come on. About that time I hear something slam against my mirror, and it slams up against the passenger side door. That's when I looked in the ditch and I seen Laura Smithers laying in the ditch.
I mean, he knew that justice was coming, you know, the time was up, and that he was going to try and make the best deal possible, you know, to, you know, number one, probably keep himself off of death row.
In February of 2016, Texas Ranger James Holland paid a visit to Reese in prison in Huntsville, Texas, where he was serving his sentence in the Sandra Sapah case. He brought a stack of pictures, and Reese pulled photos out of the pile of 4 missing or murdered girls: Laura Smither, Kelly Cox, Tiffany Johnston, and Jessica Kane.
The ranger had put pictures out basically to say, if you want to help yourself, I need to know who I need to go talk to. And he was referring to basically the district attorneys in those different jurisdictions. So when he laid all the pictures out of the girls, he asked him, who do I need to go speak to? The ranger's asking Bill, who do I need to go speak to? And at first he doesn't say anything. He just kind of puts his hand over all of them. And he says, what does that mean? And he says, all of them. So we knew that night that he was acknowledging responsibility for all the girls that we had pictures there.
Reese agreed to lead investigators to the body of Kelly Cox, who he said was buried in a field near Rocher in Texas.
Anyway, there's a little white building, grocery store. Like, I pulled up on the side of it, I opened up the door, and I kind of got out too fast, or I fell out, or almost fell out, or something. Anyway, I run into this girl. Coke went all over me and her. And I started cussing her. I think I pushed her. That's when she hit me with the Coke, plastic Coke thing. And I slapped her. And then it was over.
She was fighting back?
Yes.
Okay. What happens next?
And then I grabbed her around the throat and I choked her.
He had initially drawn kind of a sketchy kind of map out towards Brazoria County, out off of 288. Didn't know exactly again where it was, but we knew that was Kelly Cox from, from Denton.
See, that's the problem these other investigators have about that, is they don't think you'd kill her right there at the store when people coming and going.
There was nobody coming and going.
Is it midnight? It was right in that, what, noon? Around noon.
Well, I can't help that.
In fact, it was right around the corner from a police station. You know that?
No.
Yeah. Right around the corner. I mean, you probably go 2 blocks
from the police station.
In February of 2016, Reese was temporarily transferred to the Friendswood City Jail so he could lead investigators to Kelly Cox's remains. Friendswood police led the excavation efforts.
It's kind of a long, drawn-out process because as we went and we never found anything over the days of digging, a lot of the investigators out there from other agencies felt that he was just kind of jerking our chain and just playing us for fools. But you'd be out there at the site and you could see the concern on his face that we didn't locate, any remains. And when we get him back here to the station, he would show his concern as well. So we felt that he was telling the truth. We just had to verify it.
When Kelly's remains didn't turn up after days of digging, William Reese gave investigators a second location where he said he buried Jessica Kane. Search crews began digging in a field in southeast Houston, near Hobby Airport, with Reese alongside them in shackles.
He explained how he carried her out there and how he had to stop in the direction, and it was literally, it's like it was yesterday to him.
I was in Bennigan's, I was eating, I was drinking, I got my Jeep. I hear somebody arguing, whatever they was doing over there behind me. And then the next thing I know, she slams her door into my Jeep. I started yelling at her and she flips me off. And we got in a big argument and I got on 45 driving towards Galveston. And I kept on going. She just pulled right over behind me. She started yelling something. She was getting out of her truck. Well, she had her door open. She was yelling at me. And I lost it. I just got up and walked over there and hit her.
Why would you be going down to Galveston, though, Bill?
Just
because you live the other way.
Right, I understand. Man, I just didn't want to go. I didn't want to go home.
But think about it. This girl, and you are in the same parking lot with Bennigan's.
Right.
She lives down there. You don't. You
Right.
live the opposite direction. But yet she ends up her car on the side of the road, just a mile or two from her house.
Right.
And you really have no explanation as to why you was even going down there. After you hit the girl in the pickup truck, which you now know her name was Jessica Kane.
Right.
What happened then?
And then I put her in the Jeep because it was on the opposite side of the road. I don't know, it was on the ground, and last thing I remember, man, that was it. She wasn't breathing or nothing. I picked her up and put her in the the passenger side seat, strapped her in, and we took off. I went right out there to Allen stable barn. I had a stolen bulldozer out there, and I buried her out there.
William was really focused, just always looking at out there when we were digging. And I'll never forget, I looked at William, I says, William, what is going on in your mind right now when you see all this stuff going on? I said, do you have any remorse? And he looked at me with just a sober look right in my eyes. He said, Mr. Miller, you probably won't understand this. He says, but people like us, we don't have remorse. And it was kind of, took my breath away a little bit.
Investigators spent weeks sifting through the site, even tearing down a barn on the property. Reese began to show his frustration.
He basically was looking at the plat of land, and he kept saying, I can guarantee you she's right here. And I said, Bill, we've already dug right there. And he says, well, you didn't dig deep enough. And I said, well, we've dug like 7 feet there. And he said, well, it's not deep enough. And then he kind of cussed and said, you know, you're wasting everybody's time out here. I don't know why you're going all the way over there. He said, if you look, I could not have driven my bulldozer through that fence line if I wanted to. Well, the fence line that he was talking about was so thin that you could walk through the fence line. You could certainly drive a bulldozer through it. So I knew exactly then that he had the wrong fence line and that the next one was talking about. So we continued digging for a couple hours, going to that final fence line. And you know, that's when we located the remains.
When we unearthed the initial remains of Jessica Kane, you know, I kind of looked up at the sky and we just figured that there was God's hand at work.
I did tell William Reese, thank you, after we did find Jessica Kane.
What did he say to that?
He just looked at me. William wanted Jessica's body found. I was still to this day trying to figure out what his motive was there, whether it was really to get the death penalty taken off the table, or whether if it was another control thing that he was controlling people. I don't think it was for any guilt conscience or anything, or wanting to help a family out and bring closure.
Just over a week later, search crews also discovered Kelly Cox's remains.
We believe William Reese brought Kelly Cox back down to the Brazoria County site where he killed her there, we believe, and he buried her at that Brazoria County location.
This is the bracelet that Kelly had on that day, and the detectives found this bracelet when they found her remains.
Kelly, got it.
They had told me that they had found some remains. Well, the next morning I got a phone call that they had found the gold rope bracelet with the remains. And when they said that, that was actually when I was like, that's Kelly, you know. Now, it was only a day or two after that then that they did confirm via dental records.
I remember looking him up and seeing his face, and then just reading about all these other girls. And I remember thinking, he has a pattern, and if he led them to her, then he did some awful things to her. And I just remember reading and thinking about how she must have felt and just what was going through her mind, how scared she had to have been.
I had nightmares that she was in some human trafficking ring or sex trafficking ring or being harmed. I mean, those are the nightmares that I had. I mean, clearly I always had hope, but my biggest fear was, is she being harmed every day? I quit having the nightmares because I knew she was in God's arms.
If anyone deserved to know what had happened, it was Jan. And I know that that was one thing she had always said, that she wanted to know. She just wanted to know. It killed her not knowing. And I can never thank God enough for the fact that she knows, we know, she does not have to pass not knowing.
Alexis?
And it brought some new hope to EquiSearch organization. Even after 19 years, it's possible that we can still find these people, so don't ever give up on any of these cases. I mean, it took its emotional toll. I still have to go to my therapist. Thank God I've still got a therapist that I go to, and otherwise I could get myself in emotional trouble, and I have in the past on some of these cases. That build up and build up and build up. I do get emotionally attached.
When I found out what happened to my mother when I was 20 years old, and this was in 2016, and when William Reese led us there, I lost it. I lost my mind. I lost myself completely. It threw me out of reality because I didn't want to believe it. I just wanted to lay in bed and just shut the world out, because then I didn't have to acknowledge what happened. And I know it was very hard for Jan to see me. Really, I think I would call it a breakdown. I had a bit of a nervous mental breakdown. I've been through some therapy and things like that. Everything is so much better now that I have been able to work through my issues rather than just try to brush them aside. And I definitely have learned that mental health needs to be taken completely seriously.
Kelly told me the happiest day in her entire life was the day that Alexis was born. And he took that away. He took her joy of raising Alexis away.
I was angry. I was angry at God. I was angry at William Reese. I was angry at everything. And once I moved past that anger, the initial anger, I realized a lot of things, like God didn't do it. God just oversees us and puts us on this earth with free will. He didn't do this to us. William Reese did this to us, and it was his own decisions. And he's a monster. He's an absolute monster. My heart goes out to the other families so much for their babies that they lost, especially the Smithers. I couldn't imagine.
These girls didn't do anything wrong. They encountered the wrong guy in the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, Kelly had, she had an issue with her vehicle being locked, because she had been on a tour at the Denton County Jail, of all things. And she went ahead and ran into Bill Reese in that parking lot. In Jessica's case, I believe he went ahead and followed her, from the Bennigan's parking lot as she went south. I think Reese was in there looking. He saw somebody who he was interested in. Eventually was able to get her to pull over, and that's when he got control over her and, kidnapped her.
You got a 17-year-old girl who's not even graduated high school.
Right.
And she's going to argue with you and pull off the side of the road behind you on a darkened freeway. Don't you see what that?
Right.
Most people would say,
I understand.
I can't see that little 17-year-old girl doing that.
He had a sister that lived down the street in the same apartment complex where Jessica had gone with this other girl. And now, did he see her there? Did he follow her from there? Was he parked in the Bennigan's parking lot? There was a Shell station that we don't know, but he was constantly on the hunt.
Reese stayed in the Friendswood City Jail for 5 months during the search for remains and the subsequent investigation. He even sketched a drawing of the investigators he worked with.
Some strange way, he thought there was a friendship, I guess, that he wanted to come off as a good guy. His mind, he wanted to look somewhat like an ordinary guy in front of us, even though in the back of his mind he probably knew also that, we knew what he did. It was always the victim did this or the victim made me do that. I was drinking.
I'm drinking a lot because Laura Smithers, can't get it out of my head.
The shower back there in the jail only, dispensed cold water. But when William Reese was here, he didn't like taking cold showers. So he was able to repair the shower in the jail so that he could avail himself of, a warm shower. He did maintenance work, here painting.
Always respectful to all the other officers. If you walked into a bar and you sit down beside him, you probably start out a friendly conversation with me, but you'd even buy him a beer. But obviously he wasn't. There was that dark side to him.
How would I describe William Reese? William Reese would just be one of the guys that I worked with in my construction business. Just a normal guy that I would drink a beer with. He doesn't have that tattoo on his forehead that I'm a serial killer.
That guy was probably about as calculating, I don't want to call him clever, but he was definitely calculating. He really kind of thought that he was smarter than everybody else.
But while Reese tried to make deals to avoid the death penalty in Texas, Oklahoma County's district attorney refused to deal with him.
He was always concerned because he knew that Oklahoma was kind of the holdout. So he was always concerned from day one that wasn't maybe going to work out the way he thought it was going to work out in Oklahoma. There was never a promise ever made to him.
In July of 2016, Friendswood investigators turned Reese over to face charges in Tiffany Johnston's kidnapping and murder.
They went ahead and turned him over to the Oklahoma authorities just at the location where he kidnapped Kelly Cox back in 1997.
In September 2016, Reese was indicted in the murder of Laura Smither and Jessica Kane.
Today brings some healing after 19 years of determined investigation by many, many law enforcement officers and volunteers, and 19 years of painful waiting by some families who've been very deeply wounded.
The next year, he was indicted in Kelly Cox's murder, but it took 5 years for Reese to face trial in Tiffany Johnston's murder in Oklahoma.
We went through 6 judges, and we went through 5 defense attorneys. And one of the defense attorneys quit a week before we were supposed to have a trial.
He's been up in the Oklahoma County Jail for the last 5 years. He's actually, been on the medical floor in kind of a trustee position. It's considered to be, a privileged position, as far as being able to be out of your cell.
And that was why he wanted the death penalty off. He wanted to be out so he could socialize with people. He didn't want to be in solitary confinement with being on death row. He wouldn't be around the other inmates.
The COVID-19 pandemic delayed the trial even further until May of 2021, when a jury was selected. Prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty.
The trial was 3.5 weeks long. We sat there and listened to hours and hours and hours of tapes.
We knew that there were confessions, but we didn't have any details. And so I wanted to go hear what they said. That was really important to me. So it was a way of walking with Laura as closely as I could.
Jurors listened to recorded conversations between Reese and the Texas Ranger who got him to confess.
What was that like, hearing the confession after all these years?
Well, it was not a full-blown confession. It was I would say a half confession, because he's not telling all the truth. He did not admit to the sexual assault of any of the Texas cases, for Jessica, Kelly, or Laura.
Going back to the 3 other victims, did you have sex with any of those victims?
No.
Okay, did you try to have sex with any victims?
I don't think so.
Okay. I guess I don't think so. It kind of opens up some doors.
Well, as far as I know, no.
He only admitted sexual assault of Tiffany Johnston, but it's very clear that he sexually assaulted all 3 Texas girls.
Let's back up to Laura Smither.
Yeah.
Which is my case.
Okay.
I looked at the pictures of the truck.
Mm-hmm.
When Galveston County came out there, and I guess it was 3 days later? 4 or 5 days later?
It was about a week later.
And they got pictures of your truck. There's no damage to your truck or to your...
Right. I done fixed it. I done fixed my mirror and stuff.
There was no truck to you. there was no damage to your truck as well.
Well, sort of.
The pictures don't show anything. I mean, if you hit her that hard and broke her neck like that, you know, those pictures, you would see something.
Right, I understand. Well, I can't explain that, but I know I hit her. I know I hit her.
You know, she was also found with no clothes on.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because when I laid her in a pool of water, she still had a black outfit on.
Yeah, but they didn't come off by themselves, Bill.
Well, I understand that, but I'm telling you.
I'm just being, you and I are talking directly, okay?
Okay, but I'm being honest with you. When I laid her in that water, her clothes were on her. I know for a fact her clothes were on her. I didn't touch her clothes.
I think this man has told himself so many lies for so many years. I'm not sure he even knows what the truth is anymore.
So you hit Smithers, you never saw her?
I never saw her.
At that time, I mean, you pretty much knew she was dead?
Yes, sir. When I got out of the truck, there was a little girl down in the ditch, and she was crying and yelling. So I go down the ditch, I'm panicking, and I was trying to get her to quit screaming. And I put my hand over her mouth, and she was facing away from me, so when I turned her head around, I felt her neck pop, and she got real quiet. And I picked her up, I put her in the truck because I was panicking. I didn't know what to do. And I took her out to this detention pond. She was already dead, and I took her clothes off and put her in the water, and got rid of her clothes.
He gives a version of the truth to make himself look better and put the blame on the girls. It's always the girls' fault.
His first story was that Tiffany wanted him to have sex with him.
Car wash, I pulled in there, put the quarters in, I was spraying it, cleaned out underneath my truck. I started on the trailer part, and that's when that girl yelled, "Hey, I sprayed her." I go, "Sorry." I thought she said something. I started cussing at her. And me and her got into it. Who was in the trailer was fighting and stuff. I stopped and I sat up because it was hot in there and I started sweating. She climbed on top of it.
The main part is, I mean, the part that's hard to believe is that you guys start out with a fight.
Right.
And suddenly she wants to have sex with you.
I ain't saying she was doing it voluntarily.
And then his next story was, no, I initiated it, I did it.
Stood up to put my pants, pull up my pants and zip them up. She hit me in the back of the head with a horseshoe. I had 2 boxes of horseshoes in there. Started squeezing her around the throat, and I grabbed that lead rope, wrapped around her, and pulled it tight.
I never imagined I was going to hear as much testimony as I did, because probably 80%, I know it was a large amount of the testimony, was about the Texas cases. Oklahoma is one of the few states that allows testimony in the guilt-innocence phase of the trial in about previous victims.
There are other girls that testified in the trial in Oklahoma that he had raped before Sandra Sapal, and they got away, and they didn't necessarily report it.
A whole bunch of victims were paraded before the jury, telling their story of what he did to them. They were extremely courageous young women, getting up and testifying, and they told me afterwards they did it for Laura. They did it for Laura. But it took an awful lot out of them. It took a lot out of me just hearing them.
We watched him during court, and whenever they had pictures of Tiffany and her body, he was glued to the screen. And I mean, he was just glued to it. I guess he was reliving it, maybe? I don't know. But he was all engrossed in the pictures of how he killed Tiff. It was really hard because I already knew what to expect with the pictures, because I had already gotten the autopsy and I'd already read it and I had already looked at the pictures, and so I was prepared. But the kids wasn't. I mean, my son and my daughter wasn't. Brian wasn't, Tiffany's husband. So they took it a little bit harder.
Was it was it like being in the same room with him?
Awful. Awful. And he sat there impassively through the entire trial. I only saw one shade of emotion one time when he turned and looked at Kathy Dobry with a really, it was a demonic look is what it looked like to me. And he just sat there with, I mean, no emotion through the whole trial. I mean, there was the odd smirk, but mostly just this no expression.
After 8 days of testimony, more than 20 witnesses, it took the jury less than an hour to come up with a verdict.
Prosecution figured, oh, it'll take them 5-6 hours. So we went outside and we were standing around and my phone's going off. My daughter's having a fit. Mama's outside and she's not in the courtroom. They're getting ready to, to do this. And here everybody comes looking for Mom. And I go, okay, let's go. So we went back upstairs and they said, he's guilty. And you don't know how hard that was for me to sit there and not show, because I always wanted to get up and say, yay, but they wouldn't let you do that. So you had to sit there and wait, and the judge dismissed us, let us go on out, and then we got to holler.
The jury recommended the death penalty for Reese. In August of 2021, he was formally sentenced. Laura Smithers' family and Kelly Cox's were in the courtroom.
That's how you're supposed to feel when you're coming face to face with a monster. And he's not just any monster for me. That's the monster who took away my mom.
There's an old saying in the law, justice delayed is justice denied. Justice will not be delayed any longer in this case. I sentence you to death.
It was hard being in that room with him, with William Reese. That's the first time I'd seen him. So that was not all that easy. It was really harder than I thought it was going to be. But they were golden words.
The entire time that Kathy Dobry was making her victim impact statement, William Reese would not take his eyes off of her. I found that disgusting. Seeing him was, it's over. And I'm glad it was brief. And I'm glad that no other woman's family can be hurt.
It'll be 20 years before we'll see him dead, but we'll probably be dead because he's too evil to die. I swear he is. But at least we know he won't be out killing someone else's kids, daughters. We got justice for Tiffany, and that's what I was going for all those years, was pushing and arguing and standing up for her rights, and because this mama wasn't going to give up.
She just wouldn't give up. She's just she's a hero to all the mothers and parents.
Reese was granted an automatic appeal, which is given to everyone sentenced to death in Oklahoma. He will spend his final days on Oklahoma's death row in McAllister, where an inmate spends 22 hours a day in his cell. But murder charges in Texas are still pending. He has not faced trial in the deaths of Kelly Cox, Jessica Kane, or Laura Smither.
This is justice. It is. There was certainly a long period of time that we thought that was never going to happen. We know he's not going to get out. The fact that he was received death penalty in Oklahoma, we feel that we got that justice for all the girls in that verdict. We're really comfortable with him sitting on death row in Oklahoma and not coming back here to face our charges, because in a death row cell where he doesn't have all the perks and privileges that he managed to get in the Texas system, on death row he will be in his cell.
It wasn't for just Tiff. It was for all the girls in Texas that he murdered. It was to get justice for all the girls, even the ones that survived him.
And I was certainly thankful for Tiffany's mom that they found him guilty and that they recommended death penalty. Just because he was found guilty in Oklahoma I don't want that to minimize the focus in Texas on putting him before a jury and finding him guilty in Texas for Kelly's murder.
Kelly Cox's family is in talks with the district attorney's office in Brazoria County, where her remains were found.
I expect him to want to take Reese to trial for Kelly's death, for murdering Kelly.
It's really important to me just to hear what the DAs are thinking about, and definitely to make sure that they're not even considering dropping it just because he got a death penalty sentencing. That doesn't mean that he didn't murder my mom. He did, and he needs to be held accountable in a court of law. Now, I'm not a big pusher of the death penalty, anything like that. I don't care. Just I want the guilty verdict for what he did.
Many investigators still believe this may not be the last we've heard from William Reese.
It's very likely that we'll hear from William Reese again. And it will likely be because he is looking for some way to, get off a death row. We're working with an agency now, which, I'm not going to name, but, we are providing some evidence to another agency that currently is looking at William Reese.
I firmly believe that he's responsible for other deaths. And he's not a stupid man. I don't like to give him any credit at all, but he's not stupid. And he knew how to stalk his victims, and he was successful. But then he let one of them got away from him, and that's what got him.
We will never know how many victims he has out there. We lost a bright star. A man that had nothing to offer the world has destroyed so many children that had everything to offer. Laura, Jessica, and the others.
But from tragedy comes purpose.
The Laura Recovery Center is obviously her biggest legacy. And it's the legacy of the entire community.
The Smither family founded the Laura Recovery Center, a nonprofit aimed at preventing abductions and runaways and helping to recover missing children.
Laura's case changed how law enforcement nationally, it was one of the critical cases that changed how they look in the early days when there's a missing child. It's strange the way this happens.
Michael Barker says the emotional search for Jessica Kane inspired him to begin writing and recording music.
Her journal, I pored over the journal for hours and days and weeks and years trying to find a little thread that we could follow there. And there was a passage in there, and this was less than 2 weeks before she disappeared. She made a trip to Dallas, and she said that about sitting at a table looking at the candlelight and having a vision of important things, of horses, country crows, and being alone. And as you know, she was found in a horse pasture and been with those horses all those years.
Alone, because she's passed. Is that eerie when you read that?
It is eerie. It haunts me today. Did she have a vision of what was going on?
It's a process.
I had never heard the term country crows before. I never, ever dreamed of this. I started waking up in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd have these words in my head. And so I ignored it for a long time. And then I started writing it down.
Except for the crows and horses, the field stays the same.
A couple of those words, a few of those words about horses and being alone, I put into a song.
What made you want to put that in a song?
I needed to put it somewhere.
The reveal of inner truth.
She was very good with words. It really started making me think about words. And I think it had a lot to do with my songwriting, because I never even ever dreamed of doing anything like that.
So she inspired you think?
I do believe there was inspiration came from there. She might be pulling the strings. But she definitely had an impact on my life. They all did.
Songs still rhyme.
I had been abducted, raped, murdered, dumped, and buried.
Kelly Cox's family hopes the memorial on the UNT campus will encourage students to be vigilant and aware of their surroundings.
I didn't want people to forget that what had happened. I wanted it to be something that drew people to it so they would read the story. I said it doesn't accomplish what we hope for if they don't read the story. They don't read what happened and then go, oh wow, that wasn't very far from here.
We lived in a very safe area, and she was on a field trip with a college in broad daylight in front of a Denton jail where cops are, and it can happen to anyone. Anyone. And the world needs to be aware of that.
If there are other people around her,
it wouldn't have happened because he wouldn't have gone after her. He went after somebody who was by themselves.
William Reese's former attorney declined our request for comment. Reese is now 62 years old and has spent more than half his life in prison.
To know that he will never be out again, that will be completely satisfying. Just for the safety of young girls everywhere.
You know, we talked about forgiveness.
You know, there's no forgiving him for killing Tiffany. He might take her, and he killed her, but there's one thing that we have that he doesn't, and that's the memories. He has the memory of killing her and getting off on it, and we have the good memories of Tiffany, of her growing up, playing ball, and being spoiled.
What do you think about when you come out here?
How much I miss her, and what she'd be doing, what she'd look like.
Oh, she's my sweetie.
We have to keep moving forward because that's what she would want. And I guarantee you every day she's looking down, smiling. He took back something we can never have. You know, you don't get a redo on lives. But that's not gonna make him stop me from living my life. And we're gonna continue on, and we're gonna press forward. We're gonna make sure that there's justice for Kelly as much as we can.
I had a wonderful life. My greatest joy was in becoming a mom to Alexis. The privilege of raising her and watching her grow up was stolen from me. I want everyone to live their life to the fullest without having to cut it short by violence. If I could say anything to you personally, it would be stay aware, stay safe, and God bless. Kelly.
Yuri, Oklahoma, Alamaz, 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 Zokonta, Alamaz, Zokonta, Alamaz, Alamaz, Holmes, 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 Zokonta, Alamaz, Zokonta, Alamaz, Zokonta, Alamaz, Zokonta, 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 Alamaz, Holmes. Alamaz, Zokonta. Alamaz. Alamos, 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 Yuri, Alamos, 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 Alamos. Oklahoma, Alamos, 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 Isa, Alamos, Isa, Alamos, Isa, Alamos, Isa, Alamos, Isa, Alamos, Isa, Alamos, Rogan, Alamos, Holmes, Alamos, 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 Isa, Alamos, Alamos, Valare, Alamos, 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 Oklahoma, Alamos, Alamos, Rogan, Alamos, Valare, Alamos, 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 Holmes, Alamos, Donna E. Isa, Alamos, 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 Rogan, Alamos, Isa, Holmes, Alamos, Isa, Isa, Alamos, Alamos, Isa, Zokontal, Holmes, Oklahoma, Alamos, 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 Isa, Alamos, Oklahoma, Alamos, 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 Rogan, Alamos, 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 Holmes, Oklahoma, Alamos, 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 Rogan, Alamos, 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 Valare, Alamos, Alamos, Isa, Valare, Alamos, 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 Holmes, Holmes, Isa, Valare, Alamos, 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 Yuri, Alamos, 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 Yuri, Holmes, Alamos, Alamos, Holmes, Alamos, Holmes, Holmes, Rogan, Alamos, Holmes, Valare, Alamos, Isa, Holmes, 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 Rogan, Alamos, 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 Isa, Alamos, Alamos, Donna E, Alamos, Holmes, Holmes, Oklahoma, Holmes, Holmes, Alamos, Zokontal, Yuri, Alamos, Alamos, Zokontal, Zokontal, Rogan, Alamos, 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 Alamaz, 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 Donna E. Alamaz, Alamaz, Zokanta, Holmes, 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 Donna E. Alamaz, Alamaz, Yuri, Alamaz, Yuri, Zokanta, 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 Yuri, Zokanta, Zokanta, Alamaz, Alamaz, Holmes, Alamaz, Alamaz, Holmes, Holmes, Alamaz, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Holmes, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, 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 Holmes, Alamaz, Holmes, Isa, Alamaz, 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 Oklahoma, Yuri, Isa, Isa, Oklahoma, Hilare, Isa, Hilare, Alamaz, Holmes, Alamaz, Alamaz, Holmes, Isa, Yuri, Alamaz, Isa, Rogan, Donna E, Isa, Holmes, Alamaz, Holmes, Alamaz, Isa, 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 Holmes, Holmes, Alamaz, Holmes, Holmes, Donna E, Alamaz, Holmes, Holmes, Alamaz, Isa, Oklahoma, Alamaz, Alamaz, Isa, Holmes, 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 Hilare, Rogan, Alamaz, Alamaz, Isa, Hilare, Isa, Yuri, Alamaz, Yuri, Holmes, 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 Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, 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 Oklahoma, Isa, Alamaz, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Alamaz, Isa, Isa, Yuri, Alamaz, Isa, Alamaz, Alamaz, Isa, Isa, Alamaz, Holmes, Holmes, Donna E, Holmes, Alamaz, Holmes, 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 Hilare, Yuri, Alamaz, Holmes, Alamaz, Holmes, Hilare, Alamaz, Malamas, Isa, Malamas, Malamas, Isa, Malamas, Yuri, Malamas, Zogonda, Holmes, Malamas, Holmes, Kalare, Malamas, Isa, Yuri, Malamas, Holmes, Isa, Malamas, Isa, Malamas, Isa, Malamas, Holmes, Yuri, Malamas, Malamas, Isa, Isa, Holmes, Holmes, Malamas, Isa, Malamas, Zokontal, Holmes, Holmes, Kalare, Zokontal, Holmes, Oklama, Malamas, Holmes, Malamas, Holmes, Malamas, Holmes, Holmes, Donna E, Isa, Kalare, Somas, Somas, Holmes, Holmes, Donna E, Somas, Oklama, Somas, Malamas, Somas, Oklama, Malamas, Holmes, Holmes, Donna E, Somas, Kalare, Rogan, Yuri, Oklama, Zokontal, Rogan, Yuri, Malamas, Rogan, Zokontal, Malamas, Zokontal, Donna E, Somas, Yuri, Malamas, Malamas, Holmes, Rogan, Oklama, Malamas, Oklama, Holmes, Malamas, Holmes, Isa, Holmes, 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 Malamas, Holmes, Holmes, Malamas, Iwatani, Holmes, Holmes, Somas, 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 Rogan, Holmes, Yuri, Malamas, Malamas, Holmes, Malamas, Malamas, Holmes, Donna E. Malamas, Somas, Malamas, Holmes, Holmes, Isa, Holmes, Malamas, Holmes, Malamas, Darwin, Malamas, Holmes, Kalare, Holmes, 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 Redkit, Darwin. Ready mod. Iwatani. Alamas. Holmes. Ice Darwin. Zokonta. Holmes. Oklahoma. Alamas. Holmes. Alare. Holmes. 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 Iwatani. Alamas. Holmes. Alamas. Holmes. Holmes. Redkin. Iwatani. Alamas. Holmes. Alamas. 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 Holmes. Holmes. Alamas. Holmes. Alamas. Holmes. Alamas. Holmes. Iwatani. Alamas. Holmes. Alamas. 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 Holmes. Holmes. Iwatani. Donna Iwatani. Holmes. Alamas. Alamas. Holmes. Alamas. Zokonda. Iwatani. Oklahoma. Alamas. Iwatani. Iwatani. Alamas. Iwatani. Iwatani. Rogan. Holmes. Alamas. Alamas. Holmes. 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 Zokonta. Zokonta. Iwatani. Iwatani. Holmes. Donna Iwatani. Holmes. Iwatani. Holmes. Hilary Iwatani. Rogan Iwatani. Alamas. Holmes. Alamas. Holmes.